Hello friends. Did you know that nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy the content, I'd truly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot. Also, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Your interaction not only supports the channel's growth, but also helps these stories reach more people. Thank you all for being here. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. The snow started at 9 p.m., but Trooper Rowan Cavanaugh knew the real storm wouldn't hit until after midnight. The Weather Service had been issuing warnings all day about a massive nor'easter moving down from Canada, bringing with it whiteout conditions and temperatures well below freezing. By the time Rowan clocked in for the night shift at the Plattsburgh Barracks, the highways were already starting to ice over. He'd been with the New York State Police for 6 years, the last 3 assigned to patrol the northern stretch of Interstate 87, also known as the Northway. It was a lonely assignment, especially in winter. The Adirondack wilderness stretched out on either side of the highway for miles, nothing but dense forest and frozen lakes. During storms like this, the road could go hours without seeing a single vehicle. Most people had the sense to stay home. Rowan didn't mind the solitude. He'd grown up in these mountains, knew them as well as anyone could. His father had been a state trooper too, retired now, and had taught him to respect the wilderness and the weather. Winter up here wasn't just cold. It was a living thing, unpredictable and dangerous. You learned to read the signs, to trust your instincts, and to never underestimate how quickly conditions could turn deadly. The dispatcher's voice crackled over the radio around 11:30. All units, be advised, I-87 northbound is experiencing reduced visibility from exit 30 to the Canadian border. Salt trucks are out, but it's coming down faster than they can keep up. We've got multiple accidents reported south of exit 34. Proceed with caution. Rowan acknowledged and turned his patrol car north onto the entrance ramp. The wipers struggled against the heavy snow, and even with the high beams on, he could barely see 20 feet ahead. The road was nearly empty. Just the occasional semi-truck crawling along in the right lane, hazard lights blinking. He kept his speed down to 40 and stayed alert. Nights like this, you never knew what you'd find. Jackknifed trucks, cars in the ditch, black ice that sent vehicles spinning into the median. About 20 minutes into his patrol, the radio crackled again. This time it was a different tone, more urgent. Unit 47, we have a 911 callback for you. Came in about 10 minutes ago. Female caller reported a vehicle off the road near mile marker 128. Call disconnected before we could get details. Tried calling back twice, no answer. Can you check it out? Rowan grabbed the mic. Copy that. I'm about 15 minutes out. Any description of the vehicle? Negative. Caller said she saw taillights in the trees. That's all we got before the line went dead. Phone number traces back to a cell tower near Keysville, but the callback's going straight to a dead signal now. Understood. I'll report when I'm on scene. Mile marker 128 was in one of the more remote sections of the Northway, where the forest pressed in close on both sides, and the nearest exit was a good 10 miles in either direction. Rowan slowed as he approached, scanning the tree line for any sign of a vehicle. The snow was coming down in thick sheets now, and the wind had picked up, howling across the empty highway. Visibility was down to almost nothing. He spotted the break in the guardrail just past the marker. Fresh damage. The metal twisted outward where something had punched through. Rowan pulled onto the shoulder and activated his light bar, the red and blue glow reflecting off the swirling snow. He radioed in his position, then grabbed his flashlight and stepped out into the storm. The cold hit him like a wall. Even with his heavy jacket and gloves, the wind cut right through. He made his way to the guardrail and shined his light down the embankment. The beam barely penetrated the darkness, but he could make out tire tracks leading down into the trees. They were already filling in with fresh snow, but they were there. Someone had definitely gone off the road here. Rowan carefully made his way down the slope, using trees for support. The ground was steep and icy, and more than once he nearly lost his footing. About 30 feet down, the tracks ended at a massive pine tree, but there was no vehicle. Just the tracks leading right up to the tree and then nothing. No car, no debris, no sign of impact. Just undisturbed snow beyond the tree. He stood there for a moment, confused. The tracks were fresh. Couldn't have been more than an hour old, but the vehicle that made them had simply vanished. He swept his flashlight in a wide arc, checking the surrounding area. Nothing. The forest was silent except for the wind in the branches and the hiss of falling snow. Rowan climbed back up to the highway and got on the radio. "Dispatch, Unit 47. I'm at mile marker 128. Found tire tracks leading off the embankment, but no vehicle. Tracks end at a tree line about 30 feet down. No signs of impact or debris. It's possible the vehicle kept going and the tracks filled in, but I can't see any further trail." "Copy that, 47. We'll send a tow truck to assist with a search when one becomes available. All our trucks are tied up with accidents farther south. Might be a couple of hours." "Understood. I'm going to do a wider search on foot, see if I can find anything else." Rowan spent the next 40 minutes combing the area, working his way through the trees in a grid pattern. The snow made it almost impossible to see anything, and the cold was starting to seep through his clothes. He found nothing. No footprints, no broken branches, no piece of a vehicle. It was as if the car had driven down the embankment and simply ceased to exist. He was about to head back to his patrol car when his phone rang. Not the radio, his personal cell phone. He pulled it from his pocket and looked at the screen. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him press the button. "Hello?" Silence. Just a faint static crackling on the line like the sound of an old television tuned to a dead channel. Then, very faint, he heard something that made his blood run cold. It was a voice, distant and distorted, but unmistakably human. It said, "Help me. I'm still here." The line went dead. Rowan stood frozen in the middle of the forest, snow piling up on his shoulders. He tried calling the number back, but it wouldn't connect. Just an automated message saying the number was not in service. He stared at his phone for a long moment, then looked around at the dark trees pressing in on all sides. The forest suddenly felt very large and very empty. He made his way back to his patrol car and got inside, brushing snow off his jacket. His hands were shaking, and not just from the cold. He sat there with the engine running, trying to make sense of what he'd just heard. It had to be a mistake, maybe a glitch in the phone system or a crossed line. But the voice had sounded so desperate, so real. The radio crackled. "Unit 47, we just got another 911 call, same number as before. Female caller, very distressed. Said she's trapped in her car and can't get out." Then the line cut off again. "We're still showing your location at mile marker 128. Any sign of the vehicle?" Rowan grabbed the mic, his mind racing. "Negative, dispatch. I've searched the entire area. There's no vehicle here. Are you sure about the location?" "That's what the cell tower triangulation is showing. Should be right on top of you." Rowan looked out at the empty highway, then back down the embankment where the tracks had led to nowhere. The snow was falling even harder now, the wind shaking his patrol car. Somewhere out there in the darkness, someone was calling for help, but where they were calling from, he had no idea. "Dispatch, I'm going to continue searching. Keep trying that number. If you get through, tell them to stay on the line and try to give me something to work with, landmarks or anything they can see." "Copy that. Be careful out there, Rowan. This storm's only getting worse." He put the car in gear and slowly rolled forward along the shoulder, scanning both sides of the highway with his spotlight. The beam cut through the snow, illuminating nothing but white and the dark shapes of trees. He drove for another mile, then turned around and headed back south, checking every inch of the roadside. Nothing. No vehicles, no lights, no signs of life. Just the empty highway disappearing into the blizzard. His phone rang again. This time he answered immediately. "Hello? Can you hear me?" The static was louder now, but beneath it he could hear breathing. Rapid, panicked breathing. And then the voice again, clearer this time. "Please, you have to help me. I can't get out. It's so cold." "Where are you?" Rowan said urgently. "Tell me what you can see. What mile marker? What exit?" "I don't know," the voice said. "I went off the road. My car hit something. I'm in the trees. I can see the highway, but no one's stopping. Please, you have to find me." "What kind of car are you driving? What color?" It's a silver Honda. Please hurry. It's so cold and I can't feel my legs." The line went dead again. Rowan's heart was pounding now. He grabbed the radio. "Dispatch, I just spoke with the caller. She says she's in a silver Honda, went off the road into the trees. She can see the highway from her location. I need that tow truck here now, and I need more units to help search. This woman is injured and running out of time." "Copy. We're dispatching everyone we can, but it's going to be at least 30 minutes. The storm's got every road in the county backed up. 30 minutes. In this weather, with temperatures dropping below zero, that might as well be a death sentence." Rowan turned his patrol car around and headed back to mile marker 128. That's where the tracks had led. That's where she had to be, even if he couldn't see the vehicle. He parked and grabbed his emergency kit from the trunk. Heavy blankets, first aid supplies, flares. He'd find her. He had to. As he started back down the embankment, his phone rang one more time. He answered without looking. "I'm coming to get you. Just hold on." But this time, the voice that came through the static wasn't the woman's. It was different, deeper. And it said something that made Rowan stop dead in his tracks. "She's not where you think she is." The line went dead, and Rowan was left standing alone in the screaming wind, surrounded by darkness and snow, with no idea what was real anymore. Rowan stood in the snow, staring at his phone screen. The unknown number stared back at him, already gone from his recent calls list as if the conversation had never happened. He tried to replay the voice in his mind. It hadn't been the woman's voice, that much was certain. It had been male, low and deliberate, with an odd quality to it that he couldn't quite place. Almost like it was coming from very far away, or through layers of interference. He shook his head and focused. There was someone out here who needed help, and he was wasting time trying to make sense of impossible phone calls. He continued down the embankment, moving more carefully this time. The slope was treacherous with ice beneath the fresh snow, and the last thing he needed was to fall and injure himself out here. When he reached the spot where the tire tracks ended, he took his time examining the scene more carefully. The tracks were definitely real, pressed deep into the snow and dirt. They led in a straight line from the highway down to this exact spot, right up to the thick trunk of the pine tree. But beyond the tree, the ground was smooth and undisturbed. No vehicle could have passed this point without leaving some trace. Rowan walked around the tree, sweeping his flashlight in wide arcs. The beam caught something metallic about 15 feet to the left, partially buried in snow. He moved closer and knelt down. It was a side mirror, the kind that snaps off during an impact. Silver plastic casing, the glass cracked but intact. He picked it up and turned it over. There was a Honda logo on the back. His pulse quickened. So there had been a car here. The woman's car. But where was the rest of it? He searched the immediate area more thoroughly, finding small pieces of debris scattered among the trees. fragments of plastic, a piece of chrome trim, a length of rubber weather stripping. All of it consistent with a vehicle that had struck something hard, but still no car, and more importantly, no person. Rowan pulled out his radio. "Dispatch, Unit 47. I found debris from what appears to be a silver Honda at my location. Confirming vehicle was here, but I still have no visual on the car itself or the occupant. Debris trail suggests significant impact. Copy that, 47. Tow truck is en route, ETA 20 minutes. We've got 2 more units heading your way to assist with the search." 20 minutes. Rowan looked around at the vast darkness of the forest. If the woman was out here somewhere, injured and exposed to these temperatures, 20 minutes might be too long. He had to keep searching. He pushed deeper into the woods, following what he thought might be a continuation of the debris field. The trees were thick here, old-growth pine and hardwoods that blocked out what little light came from the highway. His flashlight beam seemed to be swallowed by the darkness, barely illuminating more than a few feet in any direction. That's when he heard it. A sound that didn't belong in the forest. A faint, metallic creaking, like a car settling on damaged suspension. It came from somewhere ahead and to his right. Rowan moved toward it, picking his way through the underbrush. The creaking came again, louder this time. And then he saw it, a shape in the darkness that didn't match the natural lines of the forest. He broke into a run as much as he could in the deep snow and burst into a small clearing. There it was. A silver Honda Civic, nose first against a massive boulder, the entire front end crumpled like an accordion. The headlights were off, the windshield fractured into a spider web of cracks, but the taillights were still glowing faintly, casting a red glow across the white snow. "Hello?" Rowan shouted. "Can you hear me? I'm a state trooper. I'm here to help." No response. He approached the driver's side and shined his light through the window. The car was empty. No one in the driver's seat. No one in the back. The airbag had deployed, and there was a small amount of blood on the steering wheel, but no sign of the driver. Rowan tried the door. Locked. He moved to the passenger's side and found that door locked as well. The back doors, same thing. Every door locked from the inside, windows rolled up, no visible way anyone could have gotten out. He stood there for a moment, trying to process what he was seeing. The car was here. The damage was real. The blood was real. But the driver had somehow vanished from a locked vehicle. His radio crackled. "Unit 47, we're getting another call from that same number. Caller is screaming. Says something's wrong. Says the car is filling with water. We can barely understand her. What's your status?" Rowan looked at the car. There was no water. The windows were fogged from the inside, but he could see clearly enough to know the interior was dry. "Dispatch, I'm standing next to the vehicle right now. It's empty. Doors are locked from the inside. There's no water, no driver, no sign of forced exit. Something is very wrong here." Static. Then, "Say again, 47? You're breaking up." "I said the car is empty. There's no one here." More static, and then a different voice came through. Not the dispatcher. A woman's voice, desperate and terrified. "Please, you have to help me. I can't breathe. The water's up to my chest." Rowan grabbed the radio. "Where are you?" "I'm at your car right now. You're not here." "I'm in the car. I'm in my car. Why can't you see me?" He looked at the Honda, sitting silent and empty in the clearing. Looked at the fogged windows. And as he watched, something impossible happened. A handprint appeared on the inside of the driver's side window. Small, feminine, pressing against the glass as if trying to push through. And then another handprint, and another, all over the windows, as if someone inside was frantically trying to get out. But there was no one inside. The car was empty. Rowan's skin went cold. He approached the window slowly, his breath forming clouds in the freezing air. The handprints were real. He could see them clearly. Fresh moisture on the glass, the distinct outline of fingers and palms. As he watched, more appeared, accompanied by the sound of muffled pounding from inside the vehicle. "Can you hear me?" he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The pounding intensified, and then, through the radio still clutched in his hand, he heard the woman's voice again, clearer now. "You're right there. I can see you. Why won't you help me?" Rowan backed away from the car. This wasn't possible. None of this was possible. He was looking at an empty car, but someone was inside, someone he couldn't see. His phone rang. He almost didn't answer, but his training took over. He pressed the button. "This is Trooper Kavanaugh." It was the other voice again, the male voice. "You need to leave right now." Who is this? What's going on here? The woman in the car isn't calling you. Not anymore. What's calling you now is something else. Something that found her phone. Something that's been waiting for someone to answer. You need to leave before it realizes you're there. The line went dead. Rowan looked back at the Honda. The handprints were gone. The windows were clear again, just fogged glass showing an empty interior. The pounding had stopped. Everything was silent except for the wind in the trees. And then the car's interior light came on. He could see inside clearly now, still empty. But as he watched, the driver's seat slowly reclined, as if someone was leaning back. The rearview mirror adjusted, tilting down as if to look at something in the back seat. And the radio came on, blasting static at full volume. Rowan's instincts screamed at him to run, but he held his ground. He was a state trooper. He didn't run from situations, no matter how strange. He approached the car again, pulled out his baton, and prepared to break the driver's side window. Before he could swing, the window rolled down on its own, slowly, smoothly, as if someone inside had pressed the button. The static from the radio poured out into the night, and beneath it, he heard something else, breathing, wet, labored breathing like someone drowning. "Hello?" he said again, knowing it was pointless but unable to stop himself. The breathing stopped. The static cut off. And in the sudden silence, he heard a single word, whispered from inside the empty car. "Found." The interior light went out, plunging everything back into darkness. Rowan stumbled backward, his heart hammering. His radio crackled again. "Unit 47, we've lost contact with you. What's your status? Tow truck is 5 minutes out." He grabbed the radio with shaking hands. "Dispatch, I don't know how to explain this. The car is here, but something's not right. I need backup. I need someone else to see this." "Copy that. Units are en route. Stay with the vehicle." Stay with the vehicle. Rowan looked at the Honda, sitting silent in the clearing. Every instinct told him to get back to his patrol car, to get away from this place. But he couldn't leave. If there was even a chance someone was still alive out here, he had to stay. He heard an engine in the distance, the tow truck finally arriving. He marked his location with a flare and headed back toward the highway to guide them in. As he climbed the embankment, he looked back one more time. The Honda's taillights were off now. The car sat in complete darkness. But just for a moment, he could have sworn he saw a figure standing beside it. A woman in a winter coat, watching him leave. When he blinked, she was gone. Bram Fenwick brought his tow truck to a stop on the shoulder, emergency lights cutting through the snow. He was a big man in his 50s with a thick beard and the kind of weathered face that came from years of working outdoors in all seasons. He'd been pulling cars out of ditches for over 20 years, and not much surprised him anymore. But when Trooper Kavanaugh waved him over and started explaining the situation, even Bram looked unsettled. "Empty?" Bram said. "You sure about that?" Sometimes people wander off after an accident, especially if they're in shock. I'm sure, Rowan said. Doors are locked from inside. I've searched the area. There's no one here. Bram shrugged and grabbed his gear. Well, let's get it out of there and see what we can figure out. Lead the way. They made their way down to the clearing, Bram carrying heavy chains and his portable winch. When he saw the Honda, he let out a low whistle. That's a hell of an impact. Whoever was driving is lucky they're not still in there. Yeah, Rowan said quietly. Lucky. Bram approached the car and peered through the windows, then tried the doors. All locked, just as Rowan had said. I'll have to break a window to get in and pop the locks. That okay? Do it. Bram shattered the driver's side window with a punch tool, reached in and unlocked the door. He pulled it open and leaned inside, checking the ignition, the glove compartment, under the seats. Keys are still in the ignition. Purse in the passenger seat. Phone's gone, though. Probably took it with her when she left. Any registration? Rowan asked. Bram checked the glove box and pulled out an insurance card. Vehicle registered to an Eloan Marchand, address in Keysville. That who called it in. Rowan felt his blood run cold. Eloan Marchand. He'd never heard the name before tonight, but now it was everywhere. The 911 caller, the voice on his phone, and now the owner of this impossible car. Yeah, he said. That's her. Bram finished his inspection and backed out of the car. Well, I can tow it, but I'm telling you right now, this is going to be a weird one for the insurance company. Driver vanishes from a locked car in the middle of a blizzard? They're going to think it's fraud. Let's just get it back to the station, Rowan said. I'll file a report and we'll go from there. Bram hooked up the Honda and started the slow process of winching it out of the clearing. It took nearly an hour, fighting the terrain and the weather, but eventually they got the car back up to the highway. As Bram secured it to the flatbed, Rowan walked around the vehicle one more time, looking for anything he might have missed. That's when he noticed the phone lying in the snow beside where the Honda had been parked. He picked it up. It was an iPhone. Screen cracked, but still powered on. The wallpaper showed a young woman with dark hair, smiling at the camera. Rowan pressed the home button. The phone was unlocked. He opened the recent calls list. The last outgoing call had been to 911 at 11:47 p.m. After that, nothing. No calls to Rowan's cell phone, no calls at all. But he had received calls, multiple calls. He'd heard her voice. He scrolled through the text messages. The last one was from earlier that evening, sent to someone named Mom. It read, "Heading home. Roads are getting bad. I'll call when I get there." Rowan pocketed the phone and walked back to his patrol car. His own phone rang again. Unknown number. He stared at it for a long moment, then answered. "Trooper Kavanaugh." Silence, then very faint. "Thank you for finding me." "Eloan, where are you?" But the line was already dead. Bram finished loading the Honda and walked over. "All set. I'll take it to the impound yard in Plattsburgh. You want to follow me in?" "Yeah," Rowan had said, still staring at his phone. "Yeah, I'll follow you." They drove south through the blizzard, the tow truck's lights barely visible through the snow. Rowan kept checking his mirrors, half expecting to see something following them. But there was nothing. Just the empty highway and the storm. When they reached the impound yard, Bram unloaded the Honda and parked it in one of the covered bays. Under the fluorescent lights, the damage looked even worse. The entire front end was destroyed, the engine compartment crushed. It was a miracle anyone had survived. Except no one had survived, because no one had been in the car when he found it. Rowan helped Bram process the paperwork, then headed back to the barracks to file his report. It was nearly 4 in the morning by the time he sat down at his desk. The station was quiet, just a couple of other troopers on duty and the night dispatcher. He opened his computer and started typing, trying to put into words what had happened. But how do you explain the impossible? How do you write that you found an empty car that wasn't empty, that you received calls from a phone that never made them, that you heard a voice calling for help from somewhere you couldn't reach? In the end, he kept it simple. Vehicle accident, driver not located at scene, ongoing investigation. He attached Eloise Marchand's information and noted that attempts to contact her had been unsuccessful. He submitted the report and leaned back in his chair, exhausted. His phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. "I'm still here." Rowan stared at the screen. His hands started shaking. He tried to reply, but the message wouldn't send. The number showed as invalid. He set the phone down and rubbed his eyes. He needed sleep. That's all this was. He was exhausted, and his mind was playing tricks on him. Tomorrow, in the daylight, this would all make sense. But as he gathered his things to head home, he heard something that made him freeze. From somewhere in the station, muffled and distant, he heard a phone ringing. Not the office phones, a cell phone. The ringtone was distinctive, a generic iPhone sound. It was coming from the evidence locker. Rowan walked slowly down the hall and stood outside the locked door. The ringing continued over and over. He unlocked the door and stepped inside. The sound was louder now. It was coming from the plastic evidence bag on the shelf, the one containing Eloise Marchand's phone. The phone he had found in the snow. The phone that had no outgoing calls after 11:47 p.m. The phone that was supposed to be dead. Rowan picked up the bag. Through the plastic, he could see the screen glowing. Incoming call, unknown number. His finger hovered over the answer button. Every rational part of his brain screamed at him not to answer it. But he had to know. He had to understand what was happening. He answered. "Hello?" The voice that came through was the same one he'd heard in the forest. Distant, distorted, desperate. "Please help me. I'm trapped. I can't get out. It's so cold and I can't see anything. Please, you have to find me. Eloise, where are you? Just tell me where you are and I'll come get you. I don't know. I've been driving for so long. The road doesn't end. I keep trying to stop, but the car won't stop. Please, make it stop." "What do you mean, the road doesn't end? What road are you on?" But the voice was fading now, getting quieter. "It's too late. I'm too far away now. I can't find my way back. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The line went dead. Rowan stood alone in the evidence room, holding a dead woman's phone, listening to the silence. And in that silence, he finally understood. Eloise Marchand wasn't lost in the woods. She wasn't wandering in shock somewhere along the highway. She was somewhere else entirely. Somewhere he couldn't reach, no matter how many times she called. And somewhere out there in the dark, on a road that had no end, she was still driving. Rowan didn't go home that night. He couldn't. Instead, he sat in his patrol car in the station parking lot, watching the snow pile up on the windshield and trying to make sense of what was happening. The evidence locker was sealed again. Eloise Marchand's phone, back in its plastic bag, silent now. But the call had been real. He'd heard her voice, felt the weight of her desperation. Around 6 in the morning, as the sky began to lighten from black to gray, his sergeant arrived for the day shift. Martin Kowalski was a 30-year veteran, a man who'd seen just about everything the job could throw at him. If anyone could help Rowan understand this, it would be him. Rowan met him in the office and laid out everything that had happened. The 911 calls, the tire tracks leading to nowhere, the empty car with handprints appearing on the windows, the phone calls that shouldn't exist. He expected skepticism, maybe even concern about his mental state. But Kowalski just listened, his weathered face unreadable. When Rowan finished, the sergeant was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "You're not the first." "What do you mean?" Kowalski walked to a filing cabinet and pulled out a thick folder. He dropped it on the desk between them. I-87 northbound, between exit 30 and the Canadian border. We've had reports going back almost 15 years. Disappeared vehicles, impossible accidents, people calling for help from places they can't be. Most troopers who encounter it write it off as equipment malfunction or stress. But every few years, someone like you comes along, someone who can't ignore it. Rowan opened the folder. Inside were dozens of incident reports, all following similar patterns. Vehicles found empty with no explanation. 911 calls from disconnected phones. Witnesses reporting cars that vanished into thin air. One report from 2013 described a trooper who'd followed a vehicle for 20 miles, watched it pull over, approached it, and found it empty with the engine still running. The driver was never located. "Why isn't anyone investigating this?" Rowan asked. "Why isn't this a bigger deal?" "Because there's nothing to investigate," Kowalski said. "No bodies, no crime scenes, no evidence that would hold up to any kind of scrutiny. Just a bunch of weird incidents that can all be explained away if you try hard enough. Lost drivers, faulty equipment, stress-induced hallucinations. The brass doesn't want to hear about anything else. But you believe it." Kowalski met his eyes. "I've been working this stretch of highway for 3 decades. I've seen things I can't explain. And I've learned that sometimes the best thing you can do is file your report, keep your mouth shut, and move on. Whatever's happening out there, it's bigger than us, and it doesn't want to be found." Rowan thought about Elowen Marchand's voice, the desperation in it, the plea for help. "So we just do nothing? Let people disappear? What would you suggest? We can't find them. We can't help them. All we can do is document what happens and hope someday someone smarter than us figures it out." Kowalski closed the folder. "My advice? Take the rest of the day off. Get some sleep. Tomorrow, you write up a clean report. No mention of impossible phone calls or handprints on windows. Just the facts that make sense. And then you forget about it." But Rowan knew he couldn't forget. Not with Elowen Marchand still out there somewhere, trapped on a road that had no end. He left the station and drove to Keysville, a small town about 15 miles south. The address on Elowen's registration led him to a modest single-story house on a quiet street. There was a car in the driveway, lights on inside. Someone was home. Rowan knocked on the door. A woman in her 60s answered, her face lined with worry that deepened when she saw his uniform. "Mrs. Marchand?" "Yes. Is this about Elowen? She never came home last night. I've been calling and calling, but her phone just goes to voicemail. I was about to file a missing person report." "Can I come in? I need to ask you some questions." They sat in a small, neat living room. Family photos covered the walls. Rowan saw Elowen in many of them, a young woman in her late 20s with dark hair and a bright smile. In one photo, she was standing next to a silver Honda Civic. "When did you last speak with your daughter?" Rowan asked. "Yesterday evening, around 8 o'clock. She called to say she was leaving work and heading home. She works at a medical office in Plattsburgh. The roads were getting bad, and I told her to be careful." Mrs. Marchand's voice cracked. "That was the last time I heard from her. What's happened? Please, just tell me." Rowan chose his words carefully. "We found her car early this morning. It had gone off the road near mile marker 128. She wasn't in the vehicle when we arrived." "What do you mean she wasn't in it? Where is she?" "We don't know. We've searched the area extensively. I have her phone, which we found at the scene. But there's no sign of Elowen herself. Do you know if she had any medical conditions? Anything that might cause confusion or disorientation?" Mrs. Marchand shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "No, nothing like that. She's healthy. She's careful. This doesn't make any sense." Rowan pulled out his notebook. "I need you to think carefully. Did Elowen mention anything unusual recently? Anyone following her? Any strange phone calls? Anything out of the ordinary?" "No, nothing. She lived a quiet life, work, home, time with friends. She didn't have any enemies or problems. She's just a normal girl." Mrs. Marchand looked up at him with desperate eyes. "You have to find her, please. She's all I have." "We're doing everything we can," Rowan said, though the words felt hollow. How could he explain that her daughter might be somewhere he couldn't reach? Somewhere that existed between the cracks of reality? He gave Mrs. Marchand his card and promised to call as soon as they had any information. As he walked back to his patrol car, his phone rang. He checked the screen. Unknown number, he answered immediately. Elowen? But it wasn't her voice this time. It was the other voice, the male one that had warned him before. "You need to stop looking for her. Every time you try to find her, you pull her further away. She's trapped in a loop, and your searching is making it worse." "Who are you? How do you know this?" "Because I was like her once. I went off that same stretch of road in 2007. I've been trying to find my way back ever since." The voice was clearer now, less distorted. It sounded tired, infinitely weary. "There are dozens of us out here, maybe hundreds, all driving the same road, unable to stop, unable to turn around. The more people try to find us, the further we drift. That's insane. That's not possible. You've seen it yourself. You've heard her. You know I'm telling the truth. The only way to help her is to let her go. Stop searching. Stop answering the calls. Maybe then she'll find her own way back." "I can't do that. I'm a cop. It's my job to help people." "Then you're condemning her to drive that road forever." "Your choice, Trooper Kavanaugh." The line went dead. Rowan sat in his car, hands gripping the steering wheel. He thought about the folder in Kowalski's office. All those unsolved cases spanning 15 years. All those people who'd vanished on the same stretch of highway. Were they all out there somewhere, trapped on an endless road, unable to escape? His phone rang again. This time it was the dispatcher. "Unit 47, we need you back in service. We've got another accident on I-87, northbound near mile marker 134. Single vehicle. Caller says they need assistance." Rowan's blood went cold. Mile marker 134 was only 6 miles north of where he'd found Elowen's car. "Copy that. I'm heading there now." He drove north through the continuing snowstorm, his mind racing. Was this another one? Another person being pulled into whatever impossible place had taken Elowen? He had to get there fast, had to see if he could stop it from happening again. When he reached mile marker 134, he saw the vehicle immediately. It was pulled over on the shoulder, hazard lights blinking. A dark blue sedan, engine running, wipers going. Nothing appeared wrong with it. No damage, no flat tire. Just a car sitting on the side of the highway. Rowan pulled up behind it and activated his light bar. He approached cautiously, flashlight in hand. The windows were fogged, but he could make out a figure in the driver's seat. He tapped on the window. The window rolled down, and a man in his 40s looked up at him with confused eyes. "Thank God. I've been sitting here for an hour and no one would stop. What seems to be the problem?" "I don't know. I was driving north, heading to Montreal, and I suddenly couldn't remember where I was going. Like, I knew I was supposed to be somewhere, but I couldn't remember where or why. And then, I couldn't figure out which exit to take. so I pulled over to get my bearings, but the man trailed off, looking lost. I still don't know where I'm going. Rowan felt a chill run down his spine. How long have you been driving tonight? I left Albany around 6. Should have been here by 9 or 10, but I kept missing my exit. Every time I thought I was getting close, I'd pass it somehow. I've driven past the same rest stop 3 times. The man looked at Rowan with growing fear. What's happening to me? Am I having a stroke or something? Do you feel any pain? Numbness? Difficulty speaking? No, I feel fine. I just can't think straight. It's like my mind is foggy. Rowan made a decision. I need you to turn off your engine, get out of the car, and come sit in my patrol car. We're going to get you checked out. He called for an ambulance, citing possible medical emergency. While they waited, he sat with the man, whose name was Daniel, and kept him talking, kept him focused on the present, on real concrete details. His wife's name, his kids' names, his address, anything to anchor him to reality. The ambulance arrived 20 minutes later. The EMTs checked Daniel's vitals and found nothing wrong. Blood pressure normal, pupils responsive, no signs of stroke or neurological damage. But Daniel still couldn't remember where he was going or why he'd gotten on the highway in the first place. They took him to the hospital for further evaluation. Rowan followed behind, unable to shake the feeling that he'd just prevented something terrible. If Daniel had kept driving, if he'd gone another few miles north, would he have disappeared like Elowin? Would his car have gone off the road and vanished into that impossible place? At the hospital, Rowan waited while they ran tests. Everything came back normal. The doctor's theory was a transient global amnesia event, rare but not unheard of. Stress-induced, temporary. Daniel's memory would likely return within 24 hours. But Rowan knew better. This hadn't been a medical emergency. This had been something else. Something trying to take Daniel the same way it had taken Elowin. His phone buzzed, a text message from unknown number. You saved him, but you can't save them all. We're still here, still driving, still trying to find our way home. Rowan stepped outside the hospital and called the number back. It rang once, twice, then connected. He heard the sound of wind, or maybe it was static, and beneath it, very faint, he heard voices. Multiple voices, all talking at once, all saying the same thing. Help us. Please help us. We can't find our way back. And among those voices he heard Elowin's. He drove back to the station in a daze. It was late afternoon now, the storm finally starting to break. Patches of blue sky appeared between the clouds, and the snow was tapering off. On any other day he would have been relieved, but today the clearing weather felt ominous, like the calm before something worse. Back at his desk, he pulled up the database and started searching. Every missing person report filed in the past 20 years along I-87 between Exit 30 and the Canadian border. There were more than he expected. 37 people who had vanished without a trace. Some in car accidents, some after their vehicles were found abandoned, some who had simply disappeared while traveling the highway. 37 people, all trapped on an endless road, unable to stop, unable to turn around. All still out there somewhere, calling for help that would never come. Rowan picked up Elowin's phone from the evidence bag. He held it for a long moment, then made a decision that went against every instinct, every bit of training he had. He deleted the call log, erased every record of the calls he'd received, every voicemail, every text. He wiped the phone clean and put it back in the bag. If the voice on the phone was right, if searching for them only made it worse, then maybe the best thing he could do was stop. Let them fade. Let them find their own way back, if that was even possible. It felt like giving up. It felt like abandoning people who needed help. But what else could he do? He couldn't reach them, couldn't save them. All he could do was document their disappearance and move on, just like Kowalski had said. That night, Rowan drove north on I-87 one more time. He passed mile marker 128, where Elowen's car had gone off the road. He passed mile marker 134, where he'd found Daniel confused and lost. He drove all the way to the Canadian border, then turned around and drove back. The highway was quiet now, just a few trucks and late-night travelers. The snow had stopped, leaving everything covered in white. It looked peaceful, almost beautiful. But Rowan couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, that somewhere out there, on a road parallel to his but impossibly far away, 37 people were driving through their own endless night. His phone rang. Unknown number. He let it go to voicemail. It rang again, and again, and again. Finally, around midnight, he answered. "Hello?" It was Elowen's voice, but different now. Distant and fading, like she was calling from the bottom of a well. "I'm so far away now, I can barely see the road anymore. Everything's getting dark. I think I'm almost at the end. Elowen, listen to me. You need to stop the car. Just stop driving and get out. Find somewhere safe and wait. Someone will find you." "I can't stop. The car won't let me. Every time I try to brake, it just keeps going. I've been trying for so long." Her voice cracked. "I'm so tired. I just want to go home." "You will. You're going to make it home. Just hold on. Tell my mom I'm sorry. Tell her I tried to make it back. Tell her—" The line went dead. Rowan pulled over on the shoulder and sat with his head in his hands. He'd failed her. Despite everything, despite knowing about the pattern, despite trying to help, he'd failed. His radio crackled. "All units be advised. We have a report of a vehicle accident on I-87 northbound, mile marker 128. Single vehicle, appeared out of nowhere according to witnesses. First responders are on scene." Mile marker 128. The same spot where this had all started. Rowan turned his patrol car around and headed back. He knew what he would find. He'd known since the moment Elowen's voice had faded away. When he arrived at the scene, emergency vehicles were already there, their lights painting the snow red and blue. A silver Honda Civic sat in the middle of the northbound lane, engine off. No visible damage. The same car he'd found in the woods 12 hours earlier. The same car that was supposed to be locked in the impound yard in Plattsburgh. Bram Fenwick was there too, standing next to his tow truck with a confused expression. He saw Rowan and walked over. "This is the damnedest thing. That's the same car I pulled out of the woods this morning. I left it at the impound myself. How the hell did it get back here?" "I don't know," Rowan said, though he was starting to understand. He approached the Honda. Other troopers were already on scene, documenting everything. Through the window, he could see someone in the driver's seat. A woman with dark hair, slumped forward against the steering wheel. One of the troopers opened the door and checked for a pulse. He looked up at Rowan and shook his head. "She's gone. Looks like she's been dead for several hours. No visible injuries, no signs of trauma. It's like she just stopped." Rowan looked at the woman's face. It was Elowen Marchand. She'd finally made it back, but she'd come back too late. The medical examiner arrived and pronounced her dead at the scene. Cause of death would need to be determined by autopsy, but preliminary examination suggested hypothermia. Her body temperature was far below normal, as if she'd been exposed to extreme cold for an extended period. But that didn't make sense. The car's heater had been running when they found it, and she'd only been missing for 12 hours. Not nearly long enough to die from exposure, unless she'd been somewhere else. somewhere much colder, where time moved differently, somewhere she'd been trapped for far longer than 12 hours. As they loaded her body into the ambulance, Rowan's phone rang one last time. Unknown number. He answered, already knowing what he would hear. It was Elowyn's voice, but not the desperate, frightened voice he'd heard all night. This voice was calm, almost peaceful. Thank you for trying to help me. Thank you for not giving up. I'm home now. Finally, home. I'm sorry I couldn't save you. You did save me. You brought me back. That's all I wanted, to come home. A pause. But there are others still out there. Still driving. Still lost. They're calling out too, hoping someone will answer. Someone like you. I can't help them. I don't know how. You'll figure it out. You have to. Because if you don't, they'll keep driving forever. And eventually the road will take more. It always does. The line went dead for the last time. Rowan stood on the shoulder of I-87, watching the ambulance drive away with Elowyn's body. Around him, the other troopers were wrapping up, documenting the scene, filing their reports. To them, this was just another tragic accident. A woman who'd crashed in the storm, wandered away in shock, and somehow made it back to the highway before succumbing to hypothermia. But Rowan knew the truth, and he knew that somewhere out there, on a road that existed between the cracks of reality, 36 other people were still driving, still hoping, still calling for help. He got back in his patrol car and sat there for a long time, watching the snow fall again in the headlights. His phone was silent now. No more calls from unknown numbers, no more voices begging for rescue. But he knew it wouldn't last. The road was hungry. It would take more. And when it did, his phone would ring again, and he would have to decide whether to answer. 3 weeks passed. Rowan tried to move on, tried to focus on routine patrols and normal calls. Speeding tickets, disabled vehicles, the occasional drunk driver, the mundane work of a state trooper. But every time he drove past mile marker 128, he felt it. A pull, like invisible hands reaching out from somewhere beyond the guardrail, trying to drag him off the road and into that other place. He'd stopped answering calls from unknown numbers, let them all go to voicemail. Most were spam, robocalls about extended car warranties and unpaid taxes. But sometimes, late at night when he was alone in his patrol car, he'd check those voicemails and hear nothing but static. Static that almost sounded like voices, if you listened long enough. Static that seemed to whisper his name. The official report on Elowyn Marchand's death had been ruled accidental. She'd crashed during the storm, suffered a head injury that caused confusion and disorientation, wandered away from her vehicle, and eventually made it back to the highway where she succumbed to hypothermia and shock. The medical examiner noted irregularities in the timeline and body temperature, but attributed them to unusual metabolic responses to extreme stress and cold exposure. Case closed. Her mother had called Rowan twice since the funeral, asking questions he couldn't answer. Why had Elowyn been found so far from where her car first went off the road? Why had her phone shown no activity for hours? Why had she seemed so scared in those last calls? Rowan had given her the official answers, the ones that made sense on paper, but he knew she didn't believe them. A mother knows when something is wrong. She knows when the truth is being hidden. On a Thursday night in early December, Rowan was working a late shift when his radio crackled with a familiar address. All units, we have a reported disturbance at the State Police impound facility in Plattsburgh. Security alarm triggered, requesting nearest unit to respond. Rowan was only 5 minutes away. He acknowledged and headed to the facility, a large, fenced compound where they stored seized vehicles, accident vehicles, and anything else that needed to be held for evidence or investigation. He'd been there dozens of times. and the alarm system was notoriously sensitive. Probably just a raccoon or the wind. But when he pulled up to the gate, he saw that the chain-link fence had been cut, a clean, vertical slice through the metal, wide enough for a person to slip through. The gate was still locked, but someone had bypassed it entirely. Rowan called it in and requested backup, then drew his service weapon and entered through the cut fence. The facility was poorly lit, just a few floodlights mounted on poles casting long shadows between the rows of vehicles. His flashlight beam swept across wrecked cars, rusted trucks, a school bus with a caved-in side. Nothing moved. He made his way toward the main storage building where the more recent arrivals were kept. The door was ajar, hanging open on its hinges. He pushed it wider and stepped inside. The building was dark except for emergency lighting that cast everything in a dim red glow. Rows of vehicles filled the space, each tagged and documented. Rowan moved between them slowly, every sense on high alert. He could hear something now, a faint mechanical sound. An engine idling. He followed the sound to the back corner of the building. And there, parked in its assigned space with its engine running and headlights on, was Elowen Marchand's silver Honda Civic. Rowan's blood went cold. The car should have been inoperable. The engine had been severely damaged in the crash, the entire front end destroyed. There was no way it could run, and yet here it was, idling smoothly as if it had just rolled off a showroom floor. He approached cautiously, weapon raised. Through the driver's side window he could see someone in the seat. A figure slumped forward, head resting against the steering wheel. Exactly like when they'd found Elowen's body. "Police, show me your hands." The figure didn't move. Rowan has circled around to get a better angle, and his heart nearly stopped. It was Elowen. Same dark hair, same winter coat she'd been wearing when they found her. But that was impossible. She was dead. He'd seen her body. He'd been to her funeral. He reached for the door handle, and the figure's head snapped up. It turned to look at him through the window, and Rowan stumbled backward. It was Elowen's face, but wrong. Her eyes were completely black, no whites, no iris, just solid darkness. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, with dark veins visible beneath the surface, and when she smiled, he saw that her teeth were too sharp. Too many of them. The thing that looked like Elowen pressed its hand against the window. Its fingers were too long, joints bending in ways that shouldn't be possible. And then it spoke, but not with sound. Its voice came directly into his head, bypassing his ears entirely. "You brought her back. Now she's part of the road, and the road wants more." Rowan fired 3 shots through the window. The glass shattered, and the thing lurched to the side. But there was no blood, no body, just an empty driver's seat and broken glass. The engine continued to idle. He backed away, his hands shaking. Backup would be here any minute. He just needed to get out of this building, get to safety, and figure out what the hell he'd just seen. But before he could move, every vehicle in the building started its engine simultaneously. The sound was deafening. Dozens of engines roaring to life in the enclosed space. Exhaust began to fill the air, thick and choking. And through the growing haze, Rowan saw figures appear in the driver's seats of every car. Men, women, even children, all with those same black eyes, all pressing their hands against windows, all watching him. He ran for the exit, lungs burning from the exhaust fumes. Behind him, he heard car doors opening, footsteps following. Not running, just walking with slow, steady purpose. He burst out of the building and sprinted for the cut fence, not looking back. Blue and red lights were approaching, backup finally arriving. Rowan reached his patrol car and leaned against it, gasping for air. 2 other troopers pulled up, weapons drawn. "What's going on?" "We heard shots fired." Rowan pointed at the building. "There's someone inside, multiple intruders. They started all the vehicles, the place is filling with exhaust." The troopers moved toward the building and Rowan followed on shaking legs. But when they entered, all the vehicles were silent. Engines off, no exhaust in the air, just rows of dark, empty cars. Elowin's Honda sat in its spot, engine cold, the window intact. No bullet holes, no shattered glass. "I don't see anyone," one of the troopers said, scanning the space with his flashlight. "You sure they're in here?" Rowan walked to the Honda and looked inside. Empty. The seat was covered in dust, like it hadn't been disturbed in weeks. He touched the hood. Cold. The engine hadn't been running. I must have been mistaken," he said finally. "Maybe the fumes affected me. I thought I saw something, but..." The other troopers exchanged glances. They didn't believe him, but they didn't press it. They cleared the building, found no intruders, no signs of forced entry beyond the cut fence, which was likely just vandals. After filling out the incident report, they left. Rowan sat in his patrol car for a long time after they were gone. He pulled out his personal phone and looked at his recent calls. There were 17 missed calls from unknown numbers, all from the past 3 hours. 17 calls he'd ignored while he was on patrol. He played the voicemails. They were all the same. A voice, distorted and distant, saying the same thing over and over. "We're waiting for you. Come find us. Come drive with us." And beneath those words, in the background of each message, he could hear the sound of a car engine. Not idling, not revving, just driving, steady and endless, on a road that went nowhere. Rowan deleted the messages and threw his phone onto the passenger seat. He needed to talk to someone who might understand, someone who'd dealt with this before. He drove back to the station and found Sergeant Kowalski working late in his office. I saw something tonight," Rowan said without preamble. "At the impound facility. I saw Elowin Marchand sitting in her car, but she's dead. She's been dead for 3 weeks." Kowalski looked at him with tired eyes. "I told you to let it go. I told you to move on." "I can't. Whatever took her. It's not finished. It's still out there and it's getting stronger. Tonight it came here, to the station. It's not staying on the highway anymore. What do you want me to do about it? Tell me the truth. All of it. You said you've seen things you can't explain. What exactly have you seen?" Kowalski was quiet for a long moment. Then he closed his office door and sat back down. 15 years ago, I responded to an accident on I-87. A single vehicle went through the guardrail near mile marker 128. When I got there, I found the car at the bottom of the embankment, engine still running. The driver was trapped inside, leg pinned by the dashboard. He was conscious, coherent. I called for rescue, told him to hang on. He paused, his face pale at the memory. While we waited, he told me he'd been driving for 3 days. Said he couldn't stop, couldn't find his exit, couldn't remember where he was going. But that was impossible because his car had been reported stolen only 6 hours earlier in Albany. I thought he was confused from the crash. Then rescue arrived, and we started cutting him out of the vehicle. It took about 20 minutes. But when we finally freed him and pulled him out, what? He wasn't there. We pulled out an empty jacket. The seatbelt was still buckled, the airbag was still pressed against it, but there was no body. No blood, no sign he'd ever been there. Just an empty jacket with his wallet and phone in the pockets. Rowan felt sick. What happened to him? We never found him. He's still listed as missing. But sometimes, late at night when I'm patrolling that stretch of highway, my phone will ring. Unknown number. And when I answer, I hear him. Still asking when rescue is coming. Still saying he's trapped and needs help. Kowalski looked up at Rowan. "I stopped answering years ago. You should too. But there has to be something we can do. Some way to stop this." "Stop what?" "We don't even know what it is. A phenomenon? A haunting? Some kind of spatial anomaly? All we know is that section of highway takes people, and sometimes they call from wherever they've gone. The best we can do is document it and hope someone smarter figures it out someday." Rowan shook his shestem. "That's not good enough. These are people, not statistics in a file. They deserve better than to be forgotten." "Then what's your plan? You going to drive up there and wait for it to take you too? You think you can fight it from the inside?" The idea was insane, suicidal, but a part of Rowan considered it. If he let himself be taken, if he went to wherever Elowin and the others had gone, maybe he could find a way to bring them back. Maybe he could understand what was happening and stop it. Kowalski must have seen something in his expression because he stood up and pointed at Rowan. "Don't even think about it. You go chasing after ghosts, you'll end up one yourself. I've seen it happen. Good cops, convinced they can save everyone, throwing themselves into situations they can't handle. It never ends well. So I'm supposed to just accept that people disappear and there's nothing I can do. You're supposed to do your job. Answer calls, write reports, help the people you can actually help. The rest," Kowalski shrugged, "the rest is beyond us." Rowan left the office feeling more frustrated and helpless than ever. He drove home in silence, his phone face down on the seat next to him so he wouldn't see if it rang. But even without looking, he could feel it. The pull of that road. The whisper of voices calling from somewhere between here and there. At home, he couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Elowin's last words. There are others still out there. Still driving. Still lost. 36 people, according to his research. 36 souls trapped on an endless highway, unable to stop, unable to escape. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text message. Unknown number. He picked it up, knowing he shouldn't, unable to stop himself. The message read, "Mile marker 128, tomorrow night, 2:37 a.m. Come alone, we'll be waiting." Rowan stared at the message until his screen went dark. He had a choice to make. He could ignore it, delete it, pretend he'd never seen it. Go on with his life and his career, file reports and answer calls and let the mystery remain unsolved. Or he could go. The next night, December 18th, Rowan clocked in for his shift and drove north on I-87. It was another clear night, cold but dry, with a half moon providing just enough light to see the forest on either side of the highway. Traffic was light, just the usual long-haul truckers making their runs. At 2 a.m., he positioned his patrol car on the shoulder near mile marker 128, the same spot where this had all started. He sat with the engine running, heat on, watching the clock on his dashboard tick slowly forward. 2:15 a.m., nothing. 2:25 a.m., a semi-truck passed, its running lights glowing in the darkness. 2:35 a.m., Rowan's radio crackled with routine traffic. Another trooper calling in a traffic stop 40 miles south. The temperature inside the patrol car dropped 20 degrees in an instant. Rowan's breath came out in visible clouds. His radio cut to static, then died completely. The dashboard lights flickered and went out. Only his headlights remained, cutting through the darkness ahead. And in that cone of light, a car appeared. Not driving toward him, just suddenly there, as if it had materialized from nothing. A silver Honda Civic, sitting in the middle of the northbound lane. Rowan's heart was pounding. He grabbed his flashlight and stepped out of the patrol car. The cold was incredible, far below what the weather forecast had predicted. His breath crystallized in front of his face. He approached the Honda slowly. It was Elowin's car, he was sure of it. Same damage to the front end, same license plate. But it shouldn't be here. It was locked in the impound facility. He looked through the driver's side window. Empty. But on the dashboard, illuminated by his flashlight beam, was a piece of paper. He tried the door. Unlocked. He opened it and picked up the paper. It was a hand-drawn map. Simple, crude, but clear. It showed I-87 running north-south, and beside it, another line. A parallel road running in the same direction but separate, disconnected. And on that parallel road, small X marks. 36 of them. Rowan understood. The other road. The place where they'd all gone. It ran alongside the real highway, close enough to see it, close enough to call for help, but impossibly far away. A space between spaces, accessible only through whatever cosmic flaw existed at this location. He looked up from the map and realized his patrol car was gone. The entire highway was gone. He was standing on a different road now, one that looked almost identical to I-87, but wrong in subtle ways. The pavement was darker, the mile markers were in the wrong positions, and the forest on either side was too thick, too dark, pressing in from all directions. And ahead of him, stretching into the distance, he saw taillights. Dozens of vehicles all driving north at a slow, steady pace. Never stopping, never turning. Just driving endlessly into the night. Rowan started walking toward them. He passed abandoned cars on the shoulder, some modern, some decades old. All empty. He passed mile marker 128, then 129, then 130. The numbers seemed wrong, out of order. Sometimes they repeated. Sometimes they skipped. After walking for what felt like hours, but might have been minutes, he reached the convoy of moving vehicles. He could see the drivers now through their windows. Men and women all staring straight ahead with those black, empty eyes. Not people anymore. Not quite. But among them he saw a car he recognized. A blue sedan. Daniel's car. The confused man he'd saved from the highway weeks ago. The man who couldn't remember where he was going. Rowan ran alongside it and looked through the window. Daniel sat behind the wheel, hands gripping tight, eyes black as oil. He turned to look at Rowan, and for just a moment something human flickered across his face. Recognition. Fear. And then it was gone, replaced by that blank, endless stare. "I saved you," Rowan said. "You were at the hospital. You went home." Daniel's mouth moved. No sound came out, but Rowan could read his lips. "No, I never left. I'm still driving. I'll always be driving." Rowan backed away, his mind reeling. If Daniel was here, if he'd never truly escaped, then what had gone home from the hospital that night? What had Rowan sent back to Daniel's family? He thought about Elowin's body, returned to mile marker 128 after calling from this place. Something had come back wearing her face, something that had smiled at him with too many teeth. The road was sending things back, copies maybe, or puppets. Hollow shells wearing familiar faces, infiltrating the real world while the originals remained trapped here, driving forever. Rowan's phone rang in his pocket. He pulled it out. It had no signal, shouldn't work at all, but it was ringing. He answered. It was his own voice on the other end. "You shouldn't have come here. Now you're part of it too. Now you have to drive." He looked down the road and saw a vehicle pulling up beside him. His patrol car, headlights on, passenger door swinging open. An invitation. Or a command. Rowan ran. He didn't know where, just away from the car, away from the convoy, back the way he'd come. He ran past mile markers that made no sense, past abandoned vehicles, past shadows that moved in the trees and might have been people once. He ran until his lungs burned and his legs gave out. And when he finally stopped, gasping for air, he realized he was standing at the same spot where he'd started. Mile marker 128. The silver Honda still sitting in the middle of the road, the map still lying on the dashboard. But now there were two cars beside it. The Honda and his patrol car, both empty. Rowan felt the pull then, stronger than ever. The urge to get behind the wheel, to start driving, to join the others on their endless journey. It would be so easy, so simple. Just get in the car and drive. No more questions, no more guilt, no more helplessness. Just the road, stretching on forever. He took a step toward his patrol car, then another. His hand reached for the door handle. And then he heard a voice, not in his head, but real, carried on the wind. It was Elowen's voice, but younger, lighter. The voice from the photos in her mother's house, the voice of a girl who hadn't yet learned to be afraid. Don't, please don't. If you stay, there's no one left to remember us, no one left to know we existed. You have to go back. You have to tell them what happened. You have to warn them. Rowan pulled his hand away from the door. How? How do I get back? The same way you came. The road only takes you if you let it. If you choose to drive, but if you refuse, if you walk away, it has to let you go. That's the rule. That's the only rule. What about you? What about the others? We made our choice. Some of us knew, some didn't. But we all got in the car. We all started driving. And now we can't stop. Her voice was fading now, growing distant. Go, please, before something comes to make you stay. Rowan turned away from the vehicles and started walking. Not toward the road, but perpendicular to it, straight into the dark forest. The trees seemed to resist at first, branches catching on his clothes, roots trying to trip him. But he pushed through, and with each step, the pull grew weaker. He walked for what felt like hours through darkness that shouldn't exist. And then, suddenly, he saw light. Real light. The glow of his patrol car's headlights on a real highway. He stumbled out of the tree line and onto I-87. His patrol car was right where he'd left it, engine still running. He checked his watch. 2:42 a.m. Only 5 minutes had passed. Rowan got in his car, locked the doors, and sat shaking. On the seat beside him was the hand-drawn map, the only evidence that any of it had been real. He picked it up, looked at those 36 X marks one more time, then crumpled it and threw it out the window. He couldn't save them, couldn't bring them back. But he could do one thing. He could make sure no one else joined them. The next day, Rowan put in for a transfer. He requested assignment to the Southern District, as far from I-87 as possible while staying in New York. The request was approved within a week. He packed his things, said goodbye to the few friends he'd made at the Plattsburgh barracks, and drove south without looking back. Sergeant Kowalski stopped him before he left. "You went there, didn't you?" To mile marker 128. "Yeah, and you came back. That makes you the first in 15 years. I didn't do anything. I couldn't save anyone. I just walked away." Kowalski nodded slowly. Sometimes that's all you can do. Sometimes walking away is the only victory you get. He handed Rowan a business card. "If you ever want to talk about it, call me. Anytime. I'll understand." Rowan took the card and left. He drove south on I-87 for the last time, passing mile marker 128 without slowing down. He didn't look at the tree line, didn't check for abandoned vehicles, just kept his eyes on the road ahead and drove. 3 months later, working traffic stops in Westchester County, Rowan got a call from a number he didn't recognize. He almost didn't answer. But something made him pick up. It was Mrs. Marchand, Elowyn's mother. "I'm sorry to bother you, Trooper. I know you transferred, but I had to tell someone. Had to tell you." "What's wrong?" "Elowyn came home last night. She knocked on the door at 2:37 in the morning. Said she'd been lost, but finally found her way back. She's here right now, sitting in the living room, watching TV. But..." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "It's not her. It looks like her, sounds like her, but something's wrong. Her eyes are different. And last night I saw her standing in front of the open refrigerator for 3 hours, just staring at the light. When I asked what she was doing, she said she was remembering what warmth felt like." Rowan's blood went cold. "Mrs. Marchand, listen to me carefully. That's not your daughter. Your daughter is dead. Whatever came back, it's not her. You need to leave the house right now and call the police." "But it knows things only Elowyn would know. Memories from childhood, inside jokes, everything. It doesn't matter. It's not her. Please, you have to trust me." There was a long silence, then, "She's standing in the doorway right now, looking at me, smiling." Mrs. Marchand's voice was barely audible. "Oh God, her teeth. Why does she have so many teeth?" The line went dead. Rowan tried calling back but got no answer. He immediately contacted the Keysville police and explained that he'd received a distress call from a woman at that address, possible home invasion. They promised to send units immediately. 2 hours later, he got a call back. The police had found Mrs. Marchand's house empty. No signs of struggle, no signs of forced entry. No one home. The neighbors said they'd seen Mrs. Marchand leave in the early morning hours, accompanied by a young woman. They'd gotten in a car and driven away, headed north on I-87. Rowan hung up and sat in his patrol car for a long time. The road had taken Mrs. Marchand now, too, and somewhere up north, at mile marker 128, there were now 37 X marks on a map that no longer existed. His phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. "Thank you for trying. See you soon." Rowan deleted the message, turned off his phone, and drove. He didn't patrol I-87 anymore, but he knew it didn't matter. The road was growing, spreading, sending its copies into the world, wearing familiar faces, luring more people back to that cursed stretch of highway. And someday, maybe soon, it would come for him too. But until then, he would do his job. Answer calls, write reports, help the people he could actually help. And late at night, when his phone rang from unknown numbers, he wouldn't answer. He would just keep driving, eyes forward, never looking back. Because some roads, once you've seen them, never really let you go. They just wait. The Taconic State Parkway was beautiful in the fall. Tree-lined and winding, it cut through the Hudson Valley like a ribbon, connecting small towns and offering views that made you forget you were driving at all. But Trooper Tamsin Fairchild knew better than to trust its beauty. She'd worked this stretch of highway for 4 years, and in that time, she'd responded to more fatal accidents than she cared to count. There was something about the Taconic that made people careless. The curves were deceptive, tighter than they appeared. The speed limit was 55, but people routinely pushed 70, 80, even 90. And then there were the head-on collisions, the ones that happened when someone crossed into oncoming traffic for reasons no one could ever fully explain. But of all the dangerous spots on the parkway, there was one that stood out. Mile marker 47, just north of the Putnam County line. A gentle curve, unremarkable except for the massive oak tree that stood about 20 feet off the northbound lane. That tree had been struck so many times over the years that the bark was scarred and stripped away on one side, exposing pale wood underneath. The most recent accident had happened 3 nights ago. A single vehicle, a red pickup truck, had left the road at high speed and struck the oak tree head-on. The driver, a man in his 30s named Marcus, had been killed on impact. By the time Tamsin arrived on scene, there wasn't much left to do except document everything and wait for the medical examiner. But something about that accident bothered her. The witness statements didn't add up. 3 different people had called 911 to report the crash, and all 3 had given slightly different times. One said it happened at 11:47 p.m. Another said 11:52 p.m. The third insisted it was just after midnight. The parkway had cameras at the major intersections, but mile marker 47 wasn't covered. There was no way to verify the exact time. Tamsin had written it off as confusion in the moment. People were notoriously bad at keeping track of time during emergencies. But then she'd noticed something else. The pickup truck's dashboard clock, frozen at the moment of impact, read 11:38 p.m. 11 minutes before the earliest 911 call. She'd mentioned it to her sergeant, who shrugged and said clocks in cars were often wrong. People never bothered to adjust them after daylight saving time or when the battery died. It was nothing, just another tragic accident on a road that claimed too many lives. But Tamsin couldn't let it go. So tonight, 4 days after the accident, she was working a late shift and had positioned herself near mile marker 47. Official reason: high visibility patrol to discourage speeding. Real reason: she wanted to spend time at that location, see if anything felt off. Trust her instincts the way her training officer had taught her years ago. The parkway was quiet at this hour, just past midnight. Most of the traffic was headed south toward New York City, commuters making late drives home or long-haul truckers passing through. The northbound lane was nearly empty. Tamsin sat in her patrol car on the shoulder, just south of the oak tree, and watched the occasional vehicle pass. The tree looked different at night. Its shadow stretched across the road like a dark hand reaching out. The scarred trunk seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Tamsin found herself staring at it, unable to look away. How many people had died hitting that tree? She'd have to check the records, but she was willing to bet it was more than a dozen over the years. Her radio crackled. "Unit 23, what's your current location?" Tamsin grabbed the mic. "Taconic northbound, mile marker 47, running speed enforcement." "Copy that. Be advised, we're getting reports of a disabled vehicle in your area. Callers said they saw a car on the shoulder with hazard lights on, but when they circled back to check, the vehicle was gone. Probably nothing, but keep an eye out." "Will do." Tamsin set down the mic and looked around. She hadn't seen any vehicle with hazard lights. The shoulder was empty in both directions, but something made her get out of the patrol car and walk toward the oak tree. As she approached it, she noticed something she hadn't seen during the daytime investigation. There were marks on the tree beyond the obvious impact damage. Scratches in the bark, almost like writing. She pulled out her flashlight and examined them more closely. They were words, dozens of them, carved into the wood with something sharp. Most were illegible, worn away by weather and time. But a few were clear enough to read. Names, maybe, or dates. One near the base of the tree caught her eye. "Help us, 11:38. Tamsin felt a chill run down her spine. 11:38. The exact time on Marcus's dashboard clock. She took photos of the markings with her phone, making sure to document everything. This was evidence of something, though she wasn't sure what. Vandalism, memorial graffiti, or something else. As she was photographing the tree, she heard a vehicle approaching from the south. She stepped back toward her patrol car and watched as a dark sedan came around the curve, traveling at a reasonable speed. But as it drew level with the oak tree, something happened. The sedan swerved violently to the right, as if avoiding something in the road, but there was nothing there. Tamsin could see clearly. The road was empty, yet the driver jerked the wheel hard enough that the car went up on two wheels for a moment before crashing back down and fishtailing across the shoulder. Tamsin ran toward the vehicle, activating her light bar. The sedan came to a stop about 50 feet past the tree, half on the shoulder and half on the grass. She approached with her hand on her weapon, not sure what she was about to find. The driver's door opened, and a middle-aged woman stumbled out, her face pale and her eyes wide. "Did you see it? Did you see it in the road? Ma'am, I need you to step back to your vehicle. Are you injured?" There was someone standing in the middle of the lane. A man. He was just standing there. I had to swerve or I would have hit him. The woman was shaking, her hands trembling as she pointed back towards the oak tree. "He's still there. You have to do something." Tamsin looked back at the tree. The road was empty. No one was standing there. "Ma'am, I didn't see anyone. The road is clear." "But he was right there. I saw him. He was wearing dark clothes and just standing in the middle of my lane, not moving. I barely missed him." Tamsin guided the woman to sit on the hood of her car while she checked for damage. The sedan was scraped along the passenger side from where it had brushed against the guardrail, but otherwise intact. No other vehicles involved. No signs of a pedestrian strike. "What's your name?" Lauren Vasquez." "Ms. Vasquez, have you been drinking tonight? Any medications or substances?" "No, nothing. I'm completely sober. I'm driving home from visiting my sister in Poughkeepsie. I've driven this road 100 times. Lauren looked up at Tamsin with desperate eyes. "I know what I saw. There was a man in the road." Tamsin took down all her information and ran her license. Clean record, no warrants, no history of incidents. Just a scared woman who thought she'd seen something that wasn't there. "I'm not going to cite you for reckless driving," Tamsin said, "but I need you to be more careful. The curves on this road can be tricky, especially at night. Sometimes shadows or headlights can play tricks on your perception." It wasn't a shadow, it was a person, as real as you are. Tamsin helped her get back in her car and watched as she drove away, slowly and carefully this time. Then she returned to the oak tree and swept her flashlight across the road. Nothing. No footprints, no signs that anyone had been standing there. But as she turned to walk back to her patrol car, she heard something that made her stop. It was faint, barely audible over the sound of wind in the trees. A voice, speaking words she couldn't quite make out. She turned slowly, trying to locate the source. It seemed to be coming from the direction of the tree. She moved closer, her hand instinctively moving to her weapon again. The voice grew clearer. It was a man's voice, young, panicked. "Please, somebody help. I can't get out. The door's jammed and I smell smoke. Please, somebody has to see me." Tamsin spun around, looking for the source. There was no one there. No vehicle, no person, nothing but the empty road and the scarred oak tree. "Hello? Where are you?" she called out. The voice continued as if it hadn't heard her. "The clock says 11:38, but that can't be right. I've been here so much longer. Please, I can see headlights. Someone's coming. They have to see me." Tamsin's skin crawled. She grabbed her radio. "Dispatch, Unit 23. I need you to check something for me. The fatal accident at mile marker 47 from 3 nights ago. What was the victim's first name? Stand by." A pause, then, "Victim's name was Marcus Delgado, age 34. And what time was the accident reported?" First 911 call came in at 11:47 p.m. Tamsin looked at the oak tree. The voice had stopped now, but she could still hear the echo of it in her mind. Marcus's voice, calling for help. Trapped in his truck at 11:38 p.m., 9 minutes before anyone reported the accident. She approached the tree slowly and placed her hand on the scarred bark. It was cold, much colder than the night air. And as she touched it, she felt something, a vibration, like a low-frequency hum that she could feel in her bones rather than hear with her ears. She pulled her hand away and stepped back. This tree wasn't normal. This location wasn't normal. Something was wrong here, something that had been wrong for a long time. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello? Static. Then very faint. Is anyone there? Can anyone hear me? I've been trying to call for help, but no one answers. I'm at mile marker 47 on the Taconic. There's been an accident. I need an ambulance. Tamsin's heart was racing. Who is this? My name is Marcus. Marcus Delgado. Please, you have to send help. I'm hurt, and I can't get out of my truck. I've been here for hours and no one's stopping. Marcus, listen to me. This is Trooper Fairchild with the state police. Where exactly are you right now? I told you, mile marker 47. I hit a tree. The front of my truck is completely smashed in. Why isn't anyone stopping? Cars keep driving past, but no one sees me. Tamsin looked at the oak tree. She could see the fresh damage from Marcus's truck, the broken bark and the gouges in the wood. But the truck itself was long gone, towed to the impound lot 3 days ago. Marcus, what time is it right now? A pause. My clock stopped working, but it was around 11:30 when I left the gas station, and I've been here maybe 10 or 15 minutes. So, probably 11:45? Why does that matter? I need help now. Marcus, I need you to stay calm. Help is on the way. But I need to ask you something important. Do you remember what happened? Why did you go off the road? I don't know. I was just driving, and then suddenly there was someone standing in the middle of the lane. A woman, I think. I swerved to avoid her and lost control. I didn't have time to brake. I hit the tree. But I didn't see her after. She just disappeared. A woman in the road. The same thing Lauren Vasquez had just reported. A figure standing in the middle of the lane, forcing drivers to swerve. Can you describe what she looked like? I only saw her for a second. Dark hair, wearing a long coat or dress. She was just standing there, not moving. I thought maybe she was hurt or disoriented, but when I swerved, she was just gone, like she vanished into thin air. The line started to break up, crackling with static. Marcus's voice became distorted, fading in and out. Please, send help. Been here too long, so cold. Marcus, stay on the line, don't hang up. Can't keep awake. Everything's getting dark. Tell my wife. Tell her I tried. The line went dead. Tamsin stood in the middle of the empty road, holding her phone, trying to process what had just happened. She'd just received a call from a man who'd been dead for 3 days. A man who thought it was still the night of his accident. A man who was trapped somewhere between then and now, reliving his final moments. She called dispatch. I need the phone number that was used to report the accident at mile marker 47 3 nights ago. The first call. Stand by. The dispatcher came back a minute later. That call came from 845-555-0047. Want me to try calling it back? No, Tamsin looked at her recent calls list. The unknown number that had just called her was 845-555-0147. Marcus's phone. The phone that had been recovered from the wreckage and was now sitting in an evidence locker. Never mind. False alarm. She hung up and stood there in the darkness trying to make sense of it. The timeline was wrong. Marcus had called her at 11:38 saying he'd been waiting for 10 or 15 minutes. But according to the official record, the accident wasn't reported until 11:47, and his dashboard clock had stopped at 11:38. What if Marcus had been trapped there, alive and conscious, for those missing 9 minutes? What if he'd been calling for help, but those calls hadn't reached anyone in real time? What if they were only arriving now, 3 days later? Or what if something worse was happening? What if time itself was broken at this location, fractured in a way that trapped people in loops, replaying the same moments over and over? Tamsin walked back to her patrol car and sat inside, trying to organize her thoughts. She pulled up the accident report on her laptop and read through it again. 3 911 calls, all reporting the same accident, all giving slightly different times. The first responders had arrived at 11:59 p.m. and found Marcus already dead, his body cold. But if he'd died on impact at 11:38, why was his body cold after only 21 minutes? Unless it hadn't been 21 minutes. Unless time had moved differently for Marcus than it had for everyone else. She looked up at the oak tree through her windshield. In the glow of her headlights, she could see something she hadn't noticed before. There were multiple layers of impact damage on the trunk, overlapping each other. New damage on top of old damage on top of older damage still, as if the same accident had happened over and over in the same exact spot. Her radio crackled. Unit 23, we're getting another report of a disabled vehicle near mile marker 47. Caller says they saw a red pickup truck with its hazards on, appeared to have struck a tree, but when they called back to provide more details, they said the truck had vanished. Caller is still on scene if you want to make contact. Tamsin's blood ran cold. A red pickup truck. Marcus's truck. Copy that. I'm already at that location. I'll check it out. She got out of her car and walked to the oak tree again. The road was empty. No truck, no debris, no signs of an accident. But as she stood there, she felt that vibration again. Stronger this time. And she heard the sound of metal crunching, brief and distant, like an echo from somewhere far away. She looked at her watch, 11:38 p.m., the exact time Marcus had crashed. And standing at the edge of the tree line, barely visible in the darkness, she saw a figure. A woman in a long dark coat, her hair hanging over her face, just standing there, watching. Tamsin took a step toward her. "Ma'am, state police. I need you to step into the light." The figure didn't move. Tamsin took another step, her hand moving to her weapon. "I need you to identify yourself and tell me what you're doing here." The figure tilted its head, and for just a moment Tamsin saw its face, pale, with dark, hollow eyes and a smile that was too thin, showing too many teeth. Then it stepped backward into the trees and vanished. Tamsin ran to where it had been standing, but there was nothing there. No footprints in the soft earth, no broken branches, no sign anyone had been there at all. Her phone rang. Marcus's number again. This time she didn't answer, because she was starting to understand. This wasn't about helping a trapped victim. This was about something much worse. Something that used the tree, used the accidents, used the broken timeline to lure people in. Something that fed on confusion and fear and the desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, you could save someone who was already gone. Tamsin got back in her patrol car and called for a supervisor. She needed backup. She needed someone else to witness this, because if she tried to explain what was happening without proof, they'd think she was losing her mind. As she waited for her sergeant to arrive, she looked at the oak tree one more time, and she realized that all those carvings on the trunk, all those names and dates, they weren't memorials. They were warnings. Sergeant Rodriguez arrived 20 minutes later, pulling up behind Tamsin's patrol car with his lights off. He was a veteran with over 20 years on the job, the kind of cop who'd seen everything and wasn't easily rattled. But when Tamsin explained what had been happening, even he looked skeptical. "You're telling me you got a phone call from a dead man?" Rodriguez said, crossing his arms. "And you saw a mysterious woman who vanished into thin air, and you think time is broken at this specific spot on the highway. I know how it sounds, but I'm not making this up. Check the call logs on my phone. The number matches Marcus Delgado's cell phone, the one that's supposed to be in the evidence locker right now." Rodriguez examined her phone, scrolling through the recent calls. He frowned. Could be spoofed. Scammers do that all the time, make it look like they're calling from a different number. And what about the witness who swerved to avoid someone in the road? Someone who wasn't there. That happened right in front of me. People see things when they're tired, especially on dark roads. Shadows, animals, their own headlights reflecting off road signs. It doesn't mean something supernatural is going on. Tamsin pointed at the oak tree. "Then explain the carvings on that tree. Names and dates going back years, and one of them says, 'Help us, 11:38, which is the exact time on Marcus Delgado's dashboard clock when he crashed." Rodriguez walked over to the tree and examined it with his flashlight. He studied the carvings for a long time, his expression gradually shifting from skepticism to concern. These do look old, some of them anyway. Could be vandals, people leaving memorials for accident victims. Or it could be the victims themselves trying to leave a message, trying to warn people about what happens here. Rodriguez turned to look at her. "Fairchild, I'm going to be straight with you. You're a good trooper, one of the best in the district. But what you're describing sounds like stress, fatigue, maybe spending too much time alone on night shifts. When's the last time you took a day off? This isn't about being tired. Something is wrong with this location. We need to investigate it properly. Pull all the accident reports from this mile marker going back as far as we can. Look for patterns, inconsistencies in the timelines. And what exactly do you think we're going to find? That there's a time vortex on the Taconic State Parkway? That ghosts are causing accidents?" Rodriguez shook his head. "I can't file a report based on this. There's no evidence. Nothing that would stand up to scrutiny." "Then let's gather evidence. Stay here with me for a few hours. See if anything else happens." Rodriguez checked his watch. "It's almost midnight. I've got a shift that ends at 8 a.m. and I need at least a few hours of sleep before then. I'll tell you what, you finish your patrol, go home, get some rest. If you still feel like something's wrong tomorrow, we'll talk about it with the lieutenant. Maybe we can pull those accident reports, do a proper analysis. But for now, you need to let this go." He walked back to his car, and Tamsin knew she was being dismissed. The conversation was over. She watched him drive away, his taillights disappearing around the curve, and felt a wave of frustration wash over her. She wasn't imagining this. She wasn't losing her mind. Something was happening here and no one was taking it seriously. She sat in her patrol car and pulled up the accident database on her laptop. If no one else was going to investigate, she'd do it herself. She started with mile marker 47 and worked backwards through the years looking for any reported accidents at or near that location. The list was longer than she expected. In the past 10 years alone, there had been 17 accidents at mile marker 47. 9 of them were fatal. All of them involved vehicles leaving the road and striking the oak tree. And all of them had happened between 11:30 p.m. and midnight. Tamsin felt her skin crawl. 17 accidents, same location, same tree, same narrow time window. That couldn't be coincidence. She dug deeper, pulling up the individual reports. The details were eerily similar. Single vehicle accidents, drivers who appeared to have swerved to avoid something in the road, witnesses who reported seeing the vehicle there one moment and gone the next. And in almost every case, there were discrepancies in the reported times. One accident from 2019 stood out. A woman named Patricia Kerrigan had crashed into the tree at what witnesses said was 11:42 p.m. but her cell phone showed she'd made a 911 call at 11:35 p.m., 7 minutes before the accident was supposed to have happened. The report noted the discrepancy, but attributed it to a malfunction in the phone's clock. Tamsin opened another report. In 2016, a man named David Park had crashed at the tree. Multiple witnesses called it in at different times, ranging from 11:38 to 11:51 p.m., a 13-minute spread. The responding trooper had noted in his report that David's watch had stopped at 11:38, but he'd been found dead with his body temperature suggesting he'd been deceased for over an hour. Every report had these little anomalies, time discrepancies that didn't make sense, witnesses who couldn't agree on basic facts, physical evidence that contradicted the timeline. And every responding officer had written them off as equipment malfunctions, witness confusion, or simple human error, but taken together, they painted a disturbing picture. Something at mile marker 47 was affecting time itself, creating pockets where minutes stretched into hours, where the past and present overlapped, where the dead could still call for help. Tamsin's phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. They're still here, all of them, trapped in the moment of impact. We keep trying to warn people, but no one listens. You have to stop coming here. Every time someone like you investigates, it gets stronger. Tamsin stared at the message. Who is this? The response came immediately. Patricia Kerrigan. I crashed here in 2019. I've been trying to call for help for what feels like years, but it's always 11:42 p.m., and I'm always dying and I can never get free. You have to stop trying to save us. It only makes it worse. How are you sending me messages if you're trapped? I don't know. Sometimes I can reach through. Sometimes I can make my voice heard. But it costs something every time. It pulls me deeper. I can feel myself fading, becoming part of this place, just like the others. What others? Everyone who died here. We're all still here, 17 of us now. 18 if you count the first one. The woman who started all this. She's the worst. She's the one who pulls people off the road. She's the one who keeps us trapped. Tamsin looked up at the oak tree. Who is she? I don't know her name. None of us do. But she's been here longer than any of us, decades, maybe. She died here and something went wrong. The tree wouldn't let her go, so now she makes others crash, makes them join her, and every time someone dies here, the loop gets stronger. How do I stop it? The response took longer this time. You can't. It's too late for that. The tree is part of it now. The road is part of it. This whole section of the parkway is infected. All you can do is warn people to stay away. Close this stretch of road, make it so no one else crashes here. I can't just close down a highway based on a text message from a dead person. Then more will die, and they'll join us. And eventually there will be so many of us trapped here that the loop will spread. It'll move to other mile markers, other roads. It'll keep growing until the entire parkway is one big loop, trapping everyone who drives it. The messages stopped. Tamsin tried calling the number, but it went straight to a dead signal. She sat in her car, hands shaking, trying to process everything. If this was real, if these people were truly trapped in some kind of temporal anomaly, then she had to do something. She couldn't just ignore it. But what could she do? She had no proof, no evidence that would convince anyone. Just strange phone calls and text messages that could be explained away as pranks or technical glitches. Her radio crackled. All units be advised. We're getting multiple 911 calls reporting an accident on the Taconic northbound, mile marker 47. Vehicle struck a tree. First responders are en route. Tamsin's heart sank. It was happening again. Right now, while she sat here. Another victim. She grabbed her radio. Unit 23, I'm already on scene. I don't see any accident. Repeat, no accident visible at this location. Copy that, Unit 23. But we're getting multiple callers all reporting the same thing. Can you do a thorough check of the area? Tamsin got out of her car and walked toward the oak tree. The road was empty. No vehicles, no debris, no signs of an accident. But as she approached the tree, she heard it. The sound of metal crunching, glass shattering, a horn blaring. All of it distant and muffled, as if coming from underwater. And then she saw it. For just a moment, overlaid on the empty road like a double-exposure photograph, she saw a car. A blue sedan crushed against the oak tree, smoke rising from the hood. And inside, a man slumped over the steering wheel, blood on his face. Then it was gone. The road was empty again. Tamsin's phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. "Hello? Is anyone there? I need help. I've been in an accident. I'm at mile marker 47 on the Taconic. Please send an ambulance." The voice was different this time. Not Marcus, not Patricia. Someone new. A man she didn't recognize. "What's your name?" Tamsin asked. Robert Fisk. I was driving north and someone stepped out in front of me, a woman. I swerved and hit a tree. My door is jammed and I think my leg is broken. How soon can you get here? Robert, listen to me. This is Trooper Fairchild. I'm already at your location, but I can't see your vehicle. Where exactly are you? I'm right here. I can see other cars driving past. Why isn't anyone stopping? I've been here for at least 10 minutes. My phone keeps dropping the call. Please, you have to help me. What time is it, Robert? I don't know. My phone screen is cracked. But it was around 11:30 when I left the rest stop, and this just happened, so maybe 11:40. Why does that matter? 11:40. The loop was starting over. Another victim being pulled in, trapped in the same narrow window of time that had claimed all the others. Robert, I need you to try something. I need you to get out of your car. Even if the door is jammed, break a window, climb out, get away from the tree. Can you do that? I'm trying, but I'm stuck. And there's someone outside, that woman. She's standing next to my car, just staring at me. Who is she? Is she hurt? Why isn't she helping me? Tamsin looked around frantically. The road was still empty, but she could feel something watching her. A presence, cold and malevolent, that seemed to be coming from the tree itself. Robert, don't look at her. Focus on getting out of the car. You have to get away from that tree. She's tapping on my window now. Her face, oh God, her face. What's wrong with her face? The line filled with static. Through it, Tamsin could hear Robert screaming, and beneath that another sound. A woman's voice, soft and whispering, saying the same thing over and over. Stay with us. Stay forever. The call cut off. Tamsin stood alone on the empty road, her phone silent in her hand. Robert Fisk was gone now, pulled into the loop. Trapped at 11:40 p.m., screaming in a car that no longer existed in real time. She walked to the oak tree and placed both hands on its scarred trunk. The vibration was stronger now, pulsing like a heartbeat, and she could hear them, all of them. 17 voices crying out from inside the tree, begging for help, warning her to leave, telling her it was too late, too late, too late. A vehicle approached from the south. Tamsin stepped back onto the shoulder and watched as a white van came around the curve. It was driving slowly, cautiously, as if the driver sensed something was wrong. As it drew level with the oak tree, Tamsin saw the driver's face. A young woman, eyes wide, hands gripping the wheel. The van didn't swerve. It didn't speed up. It just kept driving, passing the tree and continuing north. The driver never looked at Tamsin, never acknowledged her presence. It was as if she wasn't there. Tamsin checked her watch. 11:47 p.m., the same time Marcus Delgado's accident had been reported. the same time, the loop seemed to reset. She walked back to her patrol car and sat inside, trying to think. She needed help, real help. Someone who understood what was happening here. Someone who'd dealt with something like this before. But who? The department wouldn't take her seriously. Her sergeant had already dismissed her concerns. Then she remembered. There was a park warden who worked the Taconic State Park system. A man named Keen Halberstam. He'd been around for decades, knew the parkway better than anyone. She'd met him a few times at accident scenes, and he'd always struck her as someone who paid attention to details others missed. If anyone would know the history of mile marker 47, it would be him. She pulled up his contact information from the database and called. It rang 4 times before a gravelly voice answered. Halberstam. Mr. Halberstam, this is Trooper Fairchild with the state police. I'm sorry to call so late, but I need to ask you about something. It's about mile marker 47, isn't it? Tamsin felt a chill run down her spine. How did you know? Because you're not the first cop to call me about it, and you won't be the last. Meet me at the Fawnstock rest stop in 20 minutes. We need to talk face to face. He hung up before she could respond. Tamsin sat there for a moment, then put her patrol car in gear and headed south. As she drove away from mile marker 47, she looked in her rearview mirror. The oak tree stood silhouetted against the night sky, its branches reaching out like grasping fingers, and standing at its base, barely visible in the darkness, was the figure of a woman in a long coat, watching her leave. The Fawnstock rest stop was a small pull-off with picnic tables and a scenic overlook. It was empty at this hour, just Tamsin's patrol car and an old pickup truck that she assumed belonged to Halberstam. She parked and got out, and a moment later, a man emerged from the shadows. Keen Halberstam was in his 60s, lean and weathered, with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. He wore the green uniform of a park warden, a heavy jacket against the cold. He nodded at Tamsin but didn't offer his hand. "You've been at the tree," he said. It wasn't a question. "How can you tell?" "You have the look. Everyone who spends time there gets it. Like you've seen something you can't unsee." He gestured to one of the picnic tables. "Sit. This is going to take a while." They sat across from each other, and Halberstam pulled out a thermos of coffee. He poured 2 cups and slid one across to Tamsin. "I've been working this parkway for 35 years. Seen a lot of accidents, a lot of deaths, but mile marker 47 is different, always has been. Different how? Time doesn't work right there. Never has, as long as I've known it. Accidents happen and the details never quite line up. Witnesses see things that can't be there. Victims make calls that never reach anyone until it's too late." He sipped his coffee. "First time I noticed it was back in 1989. Woman named Elizabeth Carver went off the road and hit that oak tree. I was first on scene. Got there maybe 5 minutes after the call came in, but when I reached her car, she'd been dead for hours. Body was cold. Rigor mortis already setting in. Medical examiner said it was impossible, but there it was. What happened to her? Official report said she crashed earlier in the day and just wasn't discovered until night time. But I knew that wasn't true. I'd driven past that spot twice that day, and there was no accident. The tree wasn't damaged. Nothing. And then, suddenly, at 11:38 p.m., there it was, like it had appeared out of nowhere." Tamsin leaned forward. 11:38, that time keeps coming up. Why? Best I can figure, that's when it started. Whatever happened to create the loop, it happened at 11:38. And now that time is stuck there, repeating over and over. Every accident that happens at that tree gets pulled into that same moment. The victims get trapped, reliving their crash again and again. But why? What caused it? Halberstam was quiet for a long moment. There was an accident there in 1952, before the parkway was even finished, back when it was still under construction. A woman was driving one of the work vehicles transporting materials. She went off the road and hit that oak tree, killed on impact. But here's the thing, she wasn't supposed to be there. She'd stolen the vehicle, was trying to run away from something. Or someone. Story goes that she died at exactly 11:38 p.m., and when they found her the next morning, her watch had stopped at that time. And you think she's the one trapping people there? I think she got stuck, and she's been stuck ever since. And over the years, as more people died at that spot, the phenomenon got stronger. Now it's not just her anymore. It's everyone who's ever crashed there. They're all part of the loop, all trapped in that same moment. Tamsin thought about the text messages from Patricia Kerrigan, the phone calls from Marcus Delgado and Robert Fisk. They can reach out sometimes. The victims. They can make calls, send messages. Why? The loop isn't perfect. There are cracks in it, moments when time overlaps and the barrier between their reality and ours gets thin. That's when they can reach through, make contact. But it doesn't help them. If anything, it makes them more aware of how trapped they are. So what do we do? How do we stop it? Halberstam shook his head. I've been asking that question for 35 years. I've talked to physicists, paranormal investigators, even a priest once. Nobody has an answer. The best we can do is try to keep people away from that section of road during the danger hours. Between 11:30 and midnight, that's when the loop is most active. But we can't just close down a major highway for half an hour every night. The department would never approve it. No, they wouldn't. And people keep dying. 17 in the past 10 years alone. It's getting worse, too. The loop is expanding, pulling people in who aren't even at the crash site. Soon, it might spread to the whole parkway. He looked at her with tired eyes. That's why I'm telling you this. You need to stop investigating. Every time someone tries to figure it out, every time a cop gets obsessed with solving it, the loop feeds on that attention. It gets stronger. Tamsin stood up. I can't just walk away, not when I know people are suffering. They're already dead, Trooper. You can't save them. You can only make sure you don't join them. She left the rest stop and drove back toward mile marker 47. She knew Halberstam was right. She knew the smart thing to do was let it go, file her reports, and move on to other cases. But she couldn't. Not when she could still hear their voices, crying out from inside that tree. As she approached the oak tree, she saw something that made her slam on the brakes. There was a car pulled over on the shoulder. A blue sedan, the same one she'd seen in that brief vision earlier. She parked and approached cautiously. The car was real this time, solid and present, and sitting in the driver's seat was a man. He looked up as she tapped on the window, and his face was pale with shock. "Are you Robert Fisk?" Tamsin asked. The man nodded slowly. "How did you know my name? I just crashed here. I called 911, but no one came, and then I was back in my car, on the road, driving like nothing happened. But I know I hit that tree. I felt it. I should be dead." Tamsin looked at the oak tree. No damage. No fresh impact marks. Robert's car was completely intact. "What time is it?" she asked. Robert checked his phone. 11:47. But that can't be right. I crashed at 11:40. I've been here for at least 20 minutes. 7 minutes. He'd been trapped in the loop for 7 minutes before being released back into real time. But why? Why did he get to escape when the others didn't? "You need to leave," Tamsin said. "Right now. Drive south, get away from this area. Don't stop until you're at least 10 miles from here." "What's happening? What was that thing I saw, that woman with the... Just go. Please." Robert started his car and drove away. constantly checking his mirrors as if expecting something to chase him. Tamsin watched him disappear around the curve, then turned back to the oak tree. She walked up to it and placed her hand on the trunk again. The vibration was there, but weaker than before, as if releasing Robert had costed energy. Her phone buzzed, another text message. "Thank you for sending him away, but it won't last. He'll come back. They always come back. The tree doesn't let go easily." Tamsin typed a response. "How do I break the loop?" The answer came slowly, one word at a time, as if it was costing immense effort. "You can't. It's too old, too strong, but you can weaken it. Stop people from dying here. If no one else crashes, if no one else feeds it, maybe it will fade. Maybe we'll finally be free. And if it doesn't fade, then we'll be here forever. 17 souls trapped in a single moment, screaming for help that never comes." Tamsin looked at the carvings on the tree. All those names. All those people who'd died here, unable to escape. She made a decision. She went back to her patrol car and grabbed her emergency flares. She set them up in a line across the northbound lane, creating a barrier that would force vehicles to slow down and merge into the southbound lane. It wasn't a permanent solution, but it was something. It would make drivers more cautious as they approached mile marker 47. As she placed the last flare, her watch beeped. Midnight. The danger window had passed. The loop was dormant now, at least until tomorrow night. Tamsin got back in her car and sat there for a long time, watching the flares burn. She knew she couldn't do this every night. Eventually, someone would complain, or her supervisors would order her to stop. But for tonight at least, no one else would crash into that tree. No one else would be pulled into the loop. Her phone buzzed one final time. A message from Patricia Kerrigan. "Thank you. We felt it tonight. A little less pressure. A little less pain. Maybe there's hope after all." Tamsin started her engine and drove away, leaving the oak tree standing alone in the darkness, its victims still trapped inside, waiting for dawn that would never come. For the next week, Tamsin made it her mission to patrol mile marker 47 every night between 11:30 p.m. and midnight. She set up her flares, positioned her patrol car with the light bar active, and made herself as visible as possible. Anything to slow traffic down, to make drivers more cautious as they approached the oak tree. And it worked, sort of. There were no new accidents, no new victims pulled into the loop, but there were other problems. Drivers complained about the constant presence of a patrol car creating a speed trap. Her supervisors questioned why she was spending so much time at one location. And the department started receiving calls from confused motorists who claimed they'd seen multiple patrol cars at mile marker 47, even though Tamsin was the only one assigned there. On Thursday night, her lieutenant called her into his office. Lieutenant Mathis was a by-the-book administrator, more concerned with budgets and public relations than with actual police work. He sat behind his desk with a printout of her patrol logs. "Fairchild, I need to ask you about something. You've been spending a significant amount of time at mile marker 47 on the Taconic, every night shift for the past week. Care to explain why?" Tamsin had prepared for this conversation. "That location has a high accident rate, sir. I've been conducting high-visibility patrols to deter speeding and reckless driving. I'm aware of the accident history, but your approach is raising concerns. We've had complaints from regular commuters who feel they're being targeted. And more concerning, we've had reports of erratic behavior. One caller said they saw you talking to an empty car. Another said you were standing in the middle of the road at midnight, not responding to passing vehicles. Sir, I can assure you, I'm not finished. I pulled the evidence logs from the Delgado accident. The victim's cell phone was checked out 3 days ago. By you, without authorization. And according to the lab tech, when you returned it, the phone had recent activity on it. outgoing calls that weren't there when it was first logged. How do you explain that? Tamsin felt her stomach drop. She'd forgotten about checking out Marcus's phone, trying to verify the calls she'd received. I was following up on some inconsistencies in the case. The phone records didn't match the timeline. That's not your case. That's not your jurisdiction. And checking out evidence without proper authorization is a serious breach of protocol. Mathis leaned forward. Tamsin, I'm going to be direct with you. Several people have expressed concern about your mental state. The stress of this job can affect anyone, especially when you're working nights and dealing with fatal accidents. I want you to take some time off, mandatory leave, starting tonight. 2 weeks minimum. Sir, you don't understand. That location is dangerous. If I'm not there, if you're not there, someone else will patrol it. The highway isn't going to fall apart because one trooper takes a break. He pulled out a form and slid it across the desk. This is a referral for the department's counseling service. I strongly suggest you make an appointment. And when you come back, we'll have a conversation about your future with this unit. Tamsin looked at the form, then back at Mathis. She could see in his eyes that arguing would only make things worse. He'd already made up his mind. She was being benched. Yes, sir, I understand. Good. Turn in your patrol car keys and your service weapon. Standard procedure for administrative leave. You can pick them up when you return to duty. Tamsin left the office feeling numb. She turned in her equipment, changed out of her uniform, and walked to her personal car in the parking lot. 2 weeks. Anything could happen in 2 weeks. How many more people would crash at mile marker 47? How many more victims would be pulled into the loop? Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. They're making you stop. The tree knows you're a threat. It's been influencing people, making them see things that aren't real, planting doubts. It's protecting itself. Tamsin got in her car and typed a response. Who is this? Robert Fisk. You saved me last week. But I've been having dreams. Every night I'm back at that tree, and I can feel it pulling me. It wants me to come back. It wants me to finish what started. Don't go there. Whatever you do, stay away from that location. I'm trying, but it's hard. It's like an itch in my brain, a constant whisper telling me I left something unfinished, that I need to go back and complete the loop. A pause, then, I don't think I can resist much longer. Tamsin stared at her phone. Robert had escaped the loop, but the tree wasn't done with him. It was calling him back, trying to reclaim him. And if he returned, if he crashed there again, he wouldn't get a second chance. He'd be trapped permanently. She started her car and drove toward the parkway. She was off duty, no longer authorized to patrol, but she couldn't just sit at home knowing what was happening. She had to do something. As she drove north on the Taconic, she noticed something strange. The mile markers seemed wrong. She passed marker 45, then 46, but the next one she saw was 44. She'd somehow gone backwards. She turned around and tried again, this time paying careful attention to the sequence. 45, 46, 47, no, wait. 44 again. She was caught in a loop. The parkway itself was looping, preventing her from reaching mile marker 47, or pulling her toward it, she couldn't tell which. Tamsin pulled over and checked her GPS. According to the map, she was exactly where she should be, but the physical mile markers told a different story. She got out of her car and looked around. The landscape seemed normal, trees, guardrails, pavement. But something felt off, like she was looking at a photograph instead of reality. Her phone rang. Keen Halberstam. Where are you? He asked without preamble. On the Taconic, trying to get to mile marker 47, but I keep ending up in the wrong place. Get off the parkway, now. The loop is expanding. It's not just the tree anymore, it's the whole section of road. Anyone who knows about it, anyone who's been trying to stop it, they're being pulled in. You need to leave before you get trapped. But Robert Fisk is already lost. I've been tracking him. He drove north on the Taconic 2 hours ago and hasn't been seen since. His car was found abandoned at mile marker 47, engine running, no one inside. He's part of the loop now. Tamsin felt sick. She'd tried to save him, and instead she'd condemned him to an eternity of suffering. This is my fault. If I hadn't pulled him out the first time, it wouldn't have mattered. The tree would have claimed him eventually. That's what it does. It marks people, and then it waits for them to come back. Halberstam's voice was grim. You need to accept that you can't win this fight. The best you can do is survive it. There has to be a way to stop it, to break the loop. If there is, I haven't found it in 35 years of trying, and believe me, I've tried everything. The only thing that's kept me alive this long is knowing when to back off, when to let it win a battle so I can survive to fight another day. Tamsin looked at the mile markers around her. They were changing now, flickering between different numbers, 47, 44, 52, 38. The loop was destabilizing, pulling her in multiple directions at once. I have to go, she said. If I don't get out now, I might not be able to. She hung up and ran back to her car. She threw it in reverse and backed down the shoulder, not trusting the forward direction anymore. She kept going until she reached what looked like mile marker 40, then turned around and headed south as fast as she dared. The parkway fought her every mile. Exit signs appeared and disappeared. The road curved in ways it shouldn't. At one point, she passed the same rest stop 3 times in 5 minutes. But she kept driving, refusing to stop, refusing to give in to the confusion. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, she crossed into Westchester County, and the sensation lifted. The mile markers returned to their proper sequence. The parkway felt normal again. She pulled into a gas station and sat in her car, shaking. Her phone buzzed. Multiple text messages, all from unknown numbers, all from victims of the loop. Patricia Kerrigan. It's spreading, getting stronger. We can feel it reaching out, claiming more territory. You have to do something. Marcus Delgado. Robert joined us tonight. He's confused, scared, doesn't understand what happened. None of us do. Please, you have to stop this. Elizabeth Carver. I didn't mean for this to happen, I just wanted to escape. But when I died, something broke, time broke, and now we're all paying for it. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. And finally, from a number that showed no caller ID at all. Come back. You belong here with us. You've seen too much, know too much. The loop is calling you. Soon, you won't be able to resist. Tamsin deleted the messages and turned off her phone. She needed to think, needed to figure out her next move. Going back to mile marker 47 was suicide. But doing nothing meant more people would die. More victims would be trapped. She thought about what Halberstam had said. The phenomenon was feeding on attention, on investigation, on people trying to understand it. Every time someone got too close, tried too hard to solve the mystery, the loop grew stronger. Maybe that was the problem. Maybe the solution wasn't to fight it directly, but to starve it, to stop giving it what it wanted. But how? She couldn't just forget about 17 people trapped in a temporal anomaly. She couldn't ignore the fact that the loop was expanding, threatening to consume more of the parkway. An idea came to her. A dangerous idea, probably a stupid idea, but the only one that made sense. If the loop was feeding on attention and investigation, what if she gave it the opposite? What if she made it boring? Mundane? What if she turned mile marker 47 into just another stretch of unremarkable highway? She turned her phone back on and called the State Department of Transportation. It took several transfers and a lot of persistence, but she finally reached someone in the traffic management division. I need to request a speed limit reduction on the Taconic State Parkway between mile markers 45 and 50, and I'd like to recommend installing additional lighting, rumble strips, and possibly speed cameras. The bureaucrat on the other end sounded skeptical. That's a pretty extensive request. What's the justification? High accident rate. Multiple fatalities over the past decade. The location needs traffic calming measures to improve safety. I'll need documentation, accident reports, traffic studies, recommendations from your department. I can provide all of that. How long would implementation take? Assuming approval, 6 months to a year for planning and budgeting, then another 6 months for construction. So we're looking at 12 to 18 months minimum. Too long. Far too long. But it was something. A plan, at least. A way to make the location less dangerous in the long term. Tamsin thanked him and hung up. Then she called Halberstam back. I have an idea. It's not a solution, but it might slow things down. We need to change the nature of that location. Make it less isolated, less dark, less conducive to the kind of atmosphere that feeds the loop. You're talking about a major construction project. The state isn't going to approve that based on one trooper's hunch. Then we need to build a case. Real, documented evidence that goes beyond supernatural explanations. Traffic analysis, engineering reports, safety recommendations. We bury the supernatural stuff under layers of mundane bureaucracy. Make it about road design and accident prevention instead of ghosts and time loops. Halberstam was quiet for a moment. That might actually work. The tree thrives on mystery, on being a dark, forgotten place where strange things happen. If we turn it into a well-lit, heavily monitored section of highway, we might weaken its influence. Exactly. And in the meantime, we keep people away from there during the danger hours. You have connections with the park system, right? What if there were more ranger patrols in that area at night? More visible presence, more reasons for people to slow down and stay alert? I can arrange that, but it's going to take time, and we'll face resistance. People don't like change, and they especially don't like admitting that a piece of infrastructure is fundamentally flawed. Then we make them admit it. We gather every piece of data we can find. Accident reports, weather patterns, road surface analysis, sightline studies. We overwhelm them with evidence until they have no choice but to take action. They talked for another hour, planning their approach. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't the kind of dramatic confrontation that resolved hauntings in movies, but it was practical, and it played to their strengths. Halberstam knew the bureaucracy of the park system. Tamsin knew how to document and present evidence. Together, they might be able to effect real change. When she finally hung up, Tamsin felt something she hadn't felt in days. Hope. Not certainty, not confidence, but hope. The loop wouldn't be broken overnight. The victims wouldn't be freed anytime soon. But maybe, just maybe, they could stop it from claiming more people. And maybe that was enough. Over the next 2 weeks of her forced leave, Tamsin threw herself into research. She pulled accident reports going back 40 years. She analyzed weather patterns, traffic flow, road surface conditions. She created charts and graphs and statistical models. She turned the mystery of mile marker 47 into data, cold and impersonal and utterly mundane. And slowly, she began to notice something. The more she approached it as a technical problem rather than a supernatural one, the less she heard from the victims. The text messages stopped. The phone calls ceased. It was as if by refusing to engage with the paranormal aspect, she was starving it of attention. She met with Halberstam regularly at neutral locations, always away from the parkway. They compared notes, refined their arguments, and prepared their presentation. They contacted the families of victims and convinced several of them to join a petition for improved safety measures. They reached out to local news stations about the dangerous curve on the Taconic and got several stories about accident prevention. Nowhere in any of this did they mention time loops or trapped souls or mysterious women in the woods. It was all about engineering, about design flaws, about the need for better lighting and traffic calming. Boring, bureaucratic, and therefore unthreatening to those in power. On the last day of her leave, Tamsin received a call from Lieutenant Mathis. "Fairchild, I've been reviewing your situation. I want you to know that several community members have reached out to the department praising your work on highway safety awareness. Apparently, you've been instrumental in organizing a campaign for improved conditions on the Taconic." "Yes, sir, I used my time off productively." "I can see that. Look, I may have been hasty in my assessment of your behavior. You were pursuing a legitimate public safety concern, just in an unconventional way. When you return to duty, I'd like you to continue working on this. Partner with DOT, coordinate with the Park Service. Make this an official department initiative." Tamsin felt relief wash over her. "Thank you, sir. I'd be happy to do that." "Good. Report for duty Monday morning. And, Fairchild, good work. This is the kind of proactive policing that makes a real difference." When she hung up, she immediately called Halberstam. "It worked. They're taking it seriously. We're going to get the changes approved. Don't celebrate yet. Approval is one thing, implementation is another. And the tree isn't going to just accept this lying down. It's going to fight back." He was right. That night, as Tamsin lay in bed trying to sleep, her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something compelled her to pick up. "Hello?" It was a voice she hadn't heard before. A woman's voice, old and tired and infinitely sad. "You're trying to kill me." "Who is this? You know who I am. I'm the first, the one who started this, Elizabeth Carver, and you're trying to destroy what I've become." Tamsin sat up in bed. "You're not Elizabeth Carver. You're what's left after she died. A ghost, a memory, an echo. I'm more than that now. I'm the road itself, the tree, the loop. 70 years of death and suffering have made me into something new, and I won't let you take that away. You're trapping innocent people, making them suffer. That has to end. They're not suffering. They're with me. We're all together, all part of the same moment, the same perfect, endless moment. No past, no future, no change, no loss, just the eternal now. And you could join us. You've been touched by the loop. You can feel it calling you. Just come back to mile marker 47. Just drive north one more time. Let yourself crash. Let yourself join us. No. You can't fight this forever. The loop is patient. It will wait for you. It will call to you every night for the rest of your life. And eventually, one night when you're tired or distracted or simply unlucky, you'll answer that call. You'll find yourself on the Taconic at 11:38 p.m., and you'll see me standing in the road, and you'll swerve, and then you'll be mine forever." The line went dead. Tamsin sat in the darkness, her heart pounding. The threat was real. She could feel it, a pull in the back of her mind, a constant, low-level urge to drive north, to return to that oak tree, to see what would happen if she gave in. But she wouldn't. She couldn't. Because if she was trapped in the loop, there would be no one left to fight it, no one left to try to save the others. She got out of bed and went to her desk. She pulled out her research, her reports, her carefully documented evidence, and she added one more item to her to-do list. Request transfer to Southern District. Get as far from mile marker 47 as possible. Running away, felt like giving up. But sometimes survival was more important than victory, and if she couldn't be the one to break the loop, maybe she could at least ensure that someone else would continue the fight. Her phone buzzed. One last text message from Patricia Kerrigan. "Thank you for trying. Even if it doesn't work, thank you for not forgetting us, for treating us like we're still human. That means more than you know." Tamsin closed her eyes and whispered into the darkness. "I won't forget, I promise." But even as she said it, she wondered if that was a promise she could keep. Because the nature of loops was that they repeated. The nature of time was that it moved forward. And the nature of human memory was that it faded. How long before she forgot the voices on the phone? How long before mile marker 47 became just another accident site, unremarkable and unmemorable? How long before 17 trapped souls became a footnote in a file that no one ever read? She didn't have an answer. All she could do was fight for as long as she was able and hope that it would be enough. Outside her window, the night was quiet and still. Somewhere to the north, on a dark stretch of the Taconic State Parkway, an oak tree stood waiting. Its trunk was scarred with the marks of countless impacts, its roots deep in earth that had drunk the blood of the dying. And inside that tree, 17 voices cried out in an endless loop, calling for help that might never come. 6 months passed. 6 months of bureaucratic meetings, traffic studies, and endless paperwork. 6 months of watching the machinery of government slowly grind toward action. And 6 months of Tamsin trying to ignore the constant pull in the back of her mind, the whisper that told her to drive north, to return to mile marker 47, to see what awaited her there. She'd been reassigned to the Southern District as requested, now patrolling Westchester County well away from the Taconic's cursed stretch. The work was routine and unremarkable, which was exactly what she needed. Traffic stops, accident responses, the occasional domestic dispute. Nothing that required her to think too deeply about time loops or trapped souls. But the dreams never stopped. Every night, she found herself back at that oak tree, watching as car after car crashed into it in an endless parade of death. And in every dream, she saw Elizabeth Carver standing at the roadside, smiling with too many teeth, beckoning her to join the loop. Tamsin coped by throwing herself into the safety improvement project. She attended every planning meeting, reviewed every engineering proposal pushed for faster implementation. The Department of Transportation had finally approved a comprehensive redesign of the mile marker 47 area. New lighting, wider shoulders, rumble strips, reduced speed limits, and most importantly, the installation of a concrete barrier between the northbound lane and the oak tree. The tree itself would remain standing. Cutting it down would require environmental studies and public hearings that could delay the project for years. But it would be made inaccessible. No more vehicles crashing into it. No more deaths feeding the loop. Construction was scheduled to begin in 2 weeks. Tamsin allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, this would work. That by changing the physical nature of the location, they could weaken whatever force held those 17 souls captive. Then, on a Tuesday night in late March, everything went wrong. Tamsin was home, reviewing the construction timeline on her laptop when her phone rang. It was Keen Halberstam, and his voice was tight with urgency. "Turn on the news. Channel 7 now." She grabbed the remote and switched to the local news station. A reporter stood on the shoulder of the Taconic, emergency lights flashing behind her in the darkness. The caption read, "Breaking. Multiple vehicle accident on Taconic State Parkway." Still unclear exactly what happened, the reporter was saying. But witnesses describe a chaotic scene with at least 6 vehicles involved. State police are on scene now, and we're hearing reports of multiple fatalities. We'll bring you more information as it becomes available. The northbound lanes are completely closed between exits 16 and 18. Motorists are advised to avoid the area. Tamsin's blood ran cold. Where is it? What mile marker? 47, Halberstam said. It's happening right now. The loop is pulling people in. Not one at a time anymore, it's taking them in groups. That's not possible. There haven't been any accidents there in months. We've been keeping it monitored. The loop doesn't care about our monitoring. It's been growing stronger, waiting for the right moment. And I think it knew about the construction plans. I think it's making one last grab, trying to claim as many victims as it can before we block its access. Tamsin was already moving, grabbing her keys, heading for the door. I'm going there. I have to help. Don't. That's exactly what it wants. It wants you at that location. Wants to pull you in with the others. The best thing you can do is stay away. People are dying, Keen. I can't just sit here and do nothing. You're not authorized to respond. You're not even in the right district anymore. If you show up there, you'll be in the way. Let the troopers who are assigned to that area handle it. But Tamsin was already in her car, already pulling out of her driveway. She knew Halberstam was right. She knew this was probably a trap. But she couldn't stop herself. The pull was too strong, the need to be there too overwhelming. She drove north on the Taconic, passing through her old patrol area. As she approached mile marker 47, she saw the lights. Dozens of emergency vehicles, fire trucks, ambulances, patrol cars, all clustered around a scene of devastation. Cars were scattered across both lanes like toys thrown by an angry child. Some had rear-ended each other. Some had gone through the guardrail, and at least 3 had struck the oak tree. The tree itself was now surrounded by wreckage, its trunk illuminated by spotlights and flashers. Tamsin pulled onto the shoulder a quarter-mile back and approached on foot. She wasn't in uniform, had no official reason to be there, but in the chaos, no one questioned her presence. She made her way through the scene, looking at the damage, trying to understand what had happened. One of the responding troopers, a young man she didn't recognize, was standing by his patrol car making notes. Tamsin approached him. What happened here? He looked up, saw her civilian clothes, and frowned. You need to stay back, ma'am. This is an active scene. I'm Trooper Fairchild, reassigned to the Southern District. This location is part of a safety study I've been conducting. Can you tell me what happened? The trooper's expression shifted from suspicion to relief. Oh, thank God. Someone who might actually know what's going on here. This is the craziest thing I've ever seen. According to witnesses, all 6 of these vehicles were driving normally, spaced out over about a quarter mile. Then, at exactly 11:38, they all swerved at the same time, like they were all avoiding something in the road. But there was nothing there. Multiple witnesses confirm it. The road was clear. Tamsin felt her skin crawl. How many casualties? Still doing triage, but it looks like at least 4 dead. Maybe more. Several critical injuries. The EMTs are working on extracting victims from the vehicles that hit the tree. He shook his head. I've never seen anything like it. It's like they all saw the same hallucination at the same time. Not a hallucination, Tamsin thought. They'd all seen her. Elizabeth Carver, standing in the road, forcing them to swerve. The loop had manifested physically, visible to everyone, strong enough to cause a mass casualty event. She walked closer to the oak tree, where EMTs were working to extract someone from a crushed sedan. One of them looked up as she approached, and Tamsin recognized her. Isolde Pembroke, an EMT she'd worked with before on accident scenes. Fairchild? What are you doing here? I thought you transferred. I did. This location is personal. What's the status? Isolde gestured to the sedan. Driver's trapped, pinned by the dashboard. We're trying to cut her out, but She lowered her voice. "She's not going to make it. Too much internal damage. We're just trying to make her comfortable at this point. Can I talk to her?" She's barely conscious, keeps saying the same thing over and over. Something about a woman in the road. Tamsin moved closer to the vehicle. Through the shattered windshield, she could see the driver, a woman in her 40s, blood covering her face. Her eyes were unfocused, staring at something only she could see. "Ma'am, can you hear me? I'm Trooper Fairchild. I'm here to help." The woman's eyes shifted toward her. She was standing there, right in front of me. I tried to stop, but there wasn't time. I hit the tree instead, but when I looked back, she was gone. What did she look like? Dark hair, long coat. She was smiling, but her eyes were wrong. They were empty, like holes in her face. The woman coughed, blood bubbling at her lips. "She's still here. I can feel her. She's waiting." Waiting for what? For us to die. For us to join the others. She says there are so many now, so many voices all screaming at once. She says... The woman's voice faded, her breathing becoming labored. "She says you're next. Says you can't run forever. Says the loop always gets what it wants." The woman's eyes closed. The heart monitor attached to her flatlined. Isolde immediately began CPR, but Tamsin could see it was hopeless. The woman was gone. She stepped back, her mind reeling. 4 dead tonight, maybe more. All because the loop was growing stronger, desperate to claim more victims before the construction blocked its access to the road. Her phone buzzed. Multiple text messages, all from unknown numbers, all from the victims trapped in the loop. Patricia Kerrigan. "We felt them come in, 4 new ones. They're confused, scared. The loop is getting crowded. Too many of us in the same moment. It's becoming unstable." Marcus Delgado. "Something's wrong. The timeline is fragmenting. We're not all in the same 1138 anymore. Some of us are slipping to different times. I keep seeing myself crash over and over, but each time it's slightly different. Please, you have to do something before we lose ourselves completely." Robert Fisk. "She's changing, Elizabeth. She's not even pretending to be human anymore. She's become something else, something made of time and death and endless repetition. And she's hungry, so hungry, she wants to consume everything." And then, from a number that showed no information at all, a message that made Tamsin's blood run cold. "Construction begins in 2 weeks. But I won't let you take away my tree. I won't let you trap me behind concrete and steel. Tonight was a warning. Tomorrow, I'll take the whole parkway. Every car, every driver, every passenger, all of them will join us, and there's nothing you can do to stop me." Tamsin looked up at the oak tree. In the harsh glare of the emergency lights, she could see something moving in its branches. A shadow, darker than the surrounding darkness, taking the shape of a woman. It was watching her. She could feel its attention like a weight pressing down on her chest. She pulled out her phone and called Halberstam. "It's escalating. 4 dead tonight, and the entity is threatening to take the entire parkway tomorrow night. We have to do something." "What can we do? We can't fight it physically. We can't reason with it. We can't even reach the victims it's already claimed. There has to be a way, some weakness we haven't found yet." Tamsin's mind was racing, sorting through everything she knew about the phenomenon. The timeline discrepancies, the way victims were trapped in specific moments, the fact that the loop seemed to be anchored to 11:38 p.m. Wait, what if that's it? What if the time is important? What if the loop is locked to that specific moment, and that's both its power and its weakness? I'm not following. Every victim crashes at a different time, but they all end up at 11:38. That's when Elizabeth Carver died in 1952. That's the moment the loop is built around. What if we could disrupt that moment? Change what happened at 11:38, break the pattern. You can't change the past. Time doesn't work that way. But this isn't normal time. It's a loop, a section of time that's broken off and repeating. The rules might be different. Tamsin was talking faster now, the idea taking shape as she spoke. What if someone drove through mile marker 47 at exactly 11:38 p.m. but didn't crash, didn't swerve, didn't see the woman, didn't feed the loop? What if we could prove that 11:38 isn't always fatal? That would break the pattern, introduce a contradiction into the loop. That's insane. You'd be deliberately putting yourself in danger, driving straight into the trap. But I wouldn't crash. I'd be expecting it. I'd know what I was about to see, and I wouldn't let it affect me. I'd drive straight through, maintain my speed and course, prove that the loop can be resisted. And if you're wrong, if the loop takes you anyway, then you're just another victim, and we've lost the one person who's been fighting this thing. Tamsin watched as EMTs loaded the dead woman into an ambulance. 4 bodies tonight. Maybe more tomorrow if Elizabeth's threat was real. How many more people had to die before someone took a risk? I have to try. If I do nothing, more people will die. If there's even a chance this could work, I have to take it. Halberstam was quiet for a long moment. There might be another way, a safer way. What if you're not alone? What if multiple vehicles drove through at 11:38, all of them refusing to swerve, all of them breaking the pattern simultaneously? That would introduce multiple contradictions, might be enough to destabilize the loop. How do we coordinate that? We can't just ask random drivers to participate in a supernatural experiment. No, but we could use emergency vehicles, patrol cars, fire trucks, ambulances, all driven by people who know what they're doing, who understand the risks. We create a convoy that drives through mile marker 47 at exactly 11:38 p.m. All of us maintaining formation, none of us swerving no matter what we see. If the loop tries to take us, it has to take all of us simultaneously. That much disruption might be enough to break it. Tamsin considered this. It was still dangerous, still a risk. But spreading that risk across multiple people, multiple vehicles, made it more manageable. And having backup meant if something went wrong, there would be others to help. How fast can you organize something like that? Give me 24 hours. I'll call in every favor I'm owed, reach out to every first responder who's dealt with that location. We'll need people who've seen the strange things happen there, who'll believe what we're attempting. But I think I can put together a convoy of 10, maybe 15 vehicles. Do it. We'll make our attempt tomorrow night. 11:38 p.m. And Keen? Thank you for believing me, for helping with this. I know it's asking a lot. Those people trapped in the loop deserve someone to fight for them. And if we can save even one life by stopping future accidents, it'll be worth the risk. They hung up, and Tamsin stood at the crash scene, watching as investigators documented everything, as tow trucks began removing the wrecked vehicles. She looked at the oak tree one more time, at the shadow that still lurked in its branches. Tomorrow night, she would drive through this spot at the exact moment of the loop's power, and either she would break the phenomenon that had claimed so many lives, or she would become its latest victim. She wasn't sure which outcome scared her more. The next day passed in a blur of preparation. Halberstam worked his contacts, assembling a team of volunteers. Tamsin spent her time reviewing every detail of the plan, trying to anticipate what could go wrong. She also did something she'd been avoiding for months. She researched Elizabeth Carver. The official records were sparse. Elizabeth Carver, age 34, died on the night of October 12, 1952, when the vehicle she was driving went off the road and struck a tree on what would eventually become the Taconic State Parkway. The road was still under construction at the time, not yet open to the public. She'd been fleeing her husband, according to police reports, taking one of the construction company's trucks in a desperate bid to escape. But there were other details, found in old newspaper archives and local historical records. Elizabeth's husband had been abusive, violent, controlling. She'd tried to leave him multiple times, but he always found her, always brought her back. The night she died, she'd finally made a real attempt to get away. She'd stolen the truck, driven north on the unfinished parkway, heading for the Canadian border. But her husband had followed. The police reports mentioned another vehicle found at the scene, her husband's car, parked on the shoulder near where Elizabeth crashed. He'd chased her down, forced her off the road. She'd died in the crash, and he'd fled the scene. He was never prosecuted, never held accountable for what he'd done. Elizabeth had died alone, terrified, and desperate. And when she died, something had broken. The injustice of it, the terror of those final moments, the knowledge that her killer would never face justice, all of it had created a wound in time itself. Tamsin sat back, staring at her computer screen. She finally understood. Elizabeth wasn't evil. She was traumatized, stuck in the worst moment of her existence, unable to move forward or let go. And every person who crashed at that tree, every victim who joined the loop, was being trapped in their own worst moment, just as she had been trapped in hers. The loop wasn't feeding on death. It was feeding on unresolved trauma, on suffering without closure, on pain that had nowhere to go. And if they wanted to break it, they needed to offer Elizabeth what she'd never received. Justice, acknowledgement, release. Tamsin called Halberstam back. "I need to change the plan. We need to do more than just drive through. We need to give Elizabeth Carver what she's been waiting for all these years." "What do you mean?" "She died because her husband forced her off the road. He killed her and was never held accountable. That's the wound that created the loop. So tomorrow night, at 11:38, we don't just drive through. We stop. We acknowledge what happened to her. We bear witness to her death and validate her suffering. We give her the recognition she never got. That's a huge risk. Stopping at the location during the active time could pull us right into the loop. Or it could be exactly what's needed to break it. She's not trying to hurt people. She's trying to make them see her, make them acknowledge what happened. Every time someone crashes, she gets their attention for a moment. But it's never enough because they're too busy dying to really understand. We need to give her our full attention, consciously and willingly." Halberstam sighed. "You're asking our volunteers to stop their vehicles at the most dangerous spot on the parkway, at the exact moment when the supernatural phenomenon is strongest, and conduct what amounts to a memorial service for a woman who's been dead for 70 years. Yes, they're going to think we're insane. Probably. But will they do it?" Another pause. "I'll ask them. But Tamsin, if this doesn't work, if we all get trapped in that loop, there won't be anyone left to help the victims. We'll just be adding more voices to the chorus of the damned." "I know, but I think this is the only way. Violence created the loop. Maybe compassion can break it." That evening, Tamsin met with the assembled volunteers at a rest stop 10 miles south of mile marker 47. There were 12 of them in total. 4 state troopers, 3 park rangers including Halberstam, 2 EMTs including Isolde Pembroke, 2 fire department drivers, and 1 DOT maintenance supervisor who'd lost a friend in an accident at the location. Tamsin explained the plan, told them everything she knew about the loop, about Elizabeth Carver, about what they were going to attempt. She expected skepticism, maybe even ridicule. But these were people who'd all experienced something strange at mile marker 47. They'd seen things that couldn't be explained, felt the wrongness of that location. They believed. "So, let me make sure I understand this," one of the troopers said. We're going to drive to mile marker 47 in a convoy. At exactly 11:38 p.m., we're going to stop our vehicles, get out, and what? Say a prayer? Hold a candlelight vigil? We're going to acknowledge what happened to Elizabeth Carver, Tamsin said. We're going to stand at the spot where she died and say, out loud, that we see her, that we understand what happened to her, and that what was done to her was wrong. We're going to give her the justice and recognition she never received, and we're going to tell her that it's okay to let go now, that she doesn't have to keep trapping others in her pain. And you think that will work? I think it's our best chance. The loop is built on unresolved trauma. If we can provide resolution, even just acknowledgement, it might be enough to break the cycle. Isolde raised her hand. What about the other victims? The 17 people already trapped in the loop. Will this free them too? I don't know. I hope so. If the loop breaks, if the phenomenon collapses, they should be released. But I can't guarantee that. I can't guarantee any of this will work. But if we don't try, Halberstam said, more people will die. The entity is threatening to take the entire parkway. Tonight was 4 victims. Tomorrow could be dozens. We have to at least attempt this. They talked for another hour, working out the logistics. They would approach from both directions, 6 vehicles from the south and 6 from the north, meeting at mile marker 47 at 11:35 p.m. That would give them 3 minutes to position their vehicles and prepare. At exactly 11:38, they would all exit their vehicles simultaneously and gather at the oak tree. Tamsin would speak. She'd prepared a statement, words to address Elizabeth directly, to acknowledge her suffering and offer her release. The others would stand witness, adding their presence and intention to the ritual, and then they would wait. Either the loop would break, or it would claim them all. At 11:15 p.m., they departed the rest stop in convoy formation. Tamsin led the southern group in her personal vehicle, not authorized to use a patrol car for this unsanctioned operation. The northern group, led by Halberstam, headed up the parkway to position themselves. The night was clear and cold, the roads nearly empty. As they approached mile marker 47, Tamsin felt the familiar pull, stronger than ever. The loop knew they were coming. It was waiting, ready to strike. At 11:35, both convoys arrived simultaneously. 12 vehicles pulled onto the shoulder, 6 on each side of the oak tree. They positioned themselves with their headlights illuminating the tree, creating a circle of light around it. Tamsin checked her watch. 11:36. 2 minutes. She got out of her car and walked toward the tree. The others joined her, forming a ring around the scarred trunk. She could feel something watching them, a presence that was both ancient and perpetually new, trapped in its single terrible moment. 11:37. Tamsin's phone buzzed. Messages from the trapped victims, coming in rapid succession. Patricia, what are you doing? We can feel something different tonight. The loop is agitated. Marcus, she knows you're here. She's gathering her strength. Be careful. Robert, I can see you. From inside the loop, I can see 12 points of light around the tree. It's beautiful, like stars. Elizabeth, in a message that came from no number at all. You came. You all came. Why? 1 minute. Tamsin pulled out the statement she'd written. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady as she began to read. Elizabeth Carver, we are here tonight to acknowledge you, to see you, to bear witness to what happened on October 12, 1952, at this location. You died here, not by accident, but because someone you trusted betrayed you. Someone you should have been able to depend on took your life through violence and cruelty. 11:38. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in an instant. The headlights flickered. and standing before them, no longer a shadow, but fully manifested, was Elizabeth Carver. She looked exactly as Tamsin had imagined from the descriptions. Dark hair, long coat, but her face was not the monstrous thing witnesses had described. It was simply sad, infinitely sad, the face of someone who had died in terror and had been unable to find peace. Tamsin continued reading, her voice carrying across the silent parkway. What was done to you was wrong. You deserved safety, protection, and justice. You received none of those things, and because of that, you have been trapped here, unable to move forward, unable to let go. But Elizabeth, we see you now, we acknowledge your suffering, and we want you to know that you don't have to keep fighting anymore. You don't have to keep others trapped in pain to make your own pain visible. Elizabeth's form flickered, like a television signal breaking up. Around them, the air began to shimmer. Tamsin could see other shapes appearing, translucent and faint. The other victims, becoming visible as the barrier between the loop and reality thinned. We're asking you to release them, Tamsin said, and we're asking you to release yourself. What happened to you was a tragedy, but you don't have to let it define eternity. You can let go, you can rest. For a long moment, nothing happened. Elizabeth stood before them, her expression unreadable, and then, so quietly that Tamsin almost missed it, she spoke, not inside their heads, but with an actual voice cracked and broken from decades of disuse. He never said he was sorry. He never admitted what he did. He died in his sleep, comfortable and warm, surrounded by family who never knew what kind of man he was. Where's the justice in that? Tamsin stepped closer. There isn't any. What happened to you wasn't fair. The fact that he escaped punishment, that's not fair either. I can't give you justice against him. He's been dead for decades, but I can give you acknowledgement. I can promise you that your story will be told, that people will know what happened here. You won't be forgotten. Your suffering won't be erased. And them? Elizabeth gestured to the shapes around them, the 17 trapped souls. What about their suffering? I made them victims just as I was a victim. How do I make amends for that? By letting them go. By breaking the loop. By making sure no one else gets trapped here. Elizabeth looked at each of the volunteers in turn, her gaze lingering on their faces. You're all so brave. Coming here knowing what I could do. Why would you risk yourselves for people you never knew? Halberstam stepped forward. Because it's the right thing to do. Because someone has to try. Because if we don't fight for the dead, who will? Tears began streaming down Elizabeth's face, the first tears she'd shed in 70 years. I'm so tired. I've been holding on for so long, keeping this moment alive because I was afraid if I let go, I'd disappear completely, like I never existed at all. You existed, Tamsin said softly. You mattered, and what happened to you mattered. I promise you, I will make sure your story is remembered. Not as a ghost story, not as a cautionary tale, but as a testament to someone who fought for her freedom and was killed for it. You won't be forgotten. Elizabeth nodded slowly. She turned to look at the oak tree, the instrument of her death that had become her prison. I'm ready. I'm ready to let go. She walked to the tree and placed her hand on the scarred trunk. The moment she made contact, everything changed. The air began to ripple and distort, reality bending like heat shimmer on summer pavement. The 17 shapes around them became clearer, more solid, taking on the forms of the people they'd been in life. Tamsin could see them now. Patricia Kerrigan, looking confused but hopeful. Marcus Delgado, still wearing the clothes he'd died in. Robert Fisk, reaching out toward the real world as if testing whether it was solid. All of them gathering around Elizabeth, all of them touching the tree. And then, with a sound like glass shattering, the loop broke. The feeling was impossible to describe. It was like a pressure that Tamsin hadn't realized she'd been carrying suddenly released. Like a note that had been slightly off key for so long that its correction felt like coming home. Like the world snapping back into alignment after being bent out of shape. The 17 victims began to fade. Not disappearing, exactly, but dissolving. Letting go, moving on to wherever it was that the dead were supposed to go. Each of them looked back at the volunteers one more time. Their expressions grateful, relieved, free. Patricia Kerrigan was the last to fade. She looked directly at Tamsin and mouthed 2 words, "Thank you." And then she was gone. Elizabeth remained a moment longer. She looked at Tamsin with eyes that were finally at peace. "Tell my story," she said. "Make sure they know I fought. Make sure they know I tried to survive. I will. I promise." Elizabeth smiled, a genuine smile that transformed her face. "Then I can rest now. Finally, I can rest." She faded like morning mist in sunshine, and suddenly the parkway was just a parkway again. The oak tree was just a tree. The air was normal temperature, the headlights steady, the sense of wrongness completely gone. It was over. The volunteers stood in silence for a long moment, none of them quite believing what they'd just experienced. Then Isolde Pembroke started laughing, a sound of pure relief and disbelief. "We did it! Holy shit, we actually did it!" Others joined in, some laughing, some crying, all of them releasing the tension they'd been carrying. They'd faced down a supernatural phenomenon and won. They'd freed 18 souls from eternal imprisonment. Tamsin's phone buzzed one final time. A text from a number that immediately deleted itself after she read it. "Thank you for giving me back my name. Thank you for letting me be Elizabeth again, not just a monster. I can see my mother now. She's been waiting for me. It's time to go home." Elizabeth Carver, finally at peace. Tamsin looked at the oak tree. In the harsh glare of 12 sets of headlights, she could see that something had changed. The scars on the trunk, the marks of countless impacts, were fading. Not disappearing entirely, but healing. The tree was releasing its connection to death and trauma, becoming just a tree again. Halberstam walked over to her. "Think the construction is still necessary?" "Absolutely. Just because the supernatural element is gone doesn't mean this isn't still a dangerous curve. We should still install the barriers, improve the lighting, make it as safe as we can for living drivers." "Agreed. But maybe we can add something else, a small memorial plaque, something that tells Elizabeth's story, so people know what happened here." Tamsin nodded. "I'd like that, and I think she would too." They spent the next hour dismantling their impromptu vigil, moving the vehicles off the shoulder, documenting what had happened for their own records, even though they knew no official report would ever capture the truth of it. As they prepared to leave, Tamsin took one last look at mile marker 47. It looked different now, lighter somehow, as if a heavy shadow had been lifted. The oak tree stood quiet and still, no longer a prison, no longer a trap, just a tree that had witnessed too much suffering and was finally allowed to simply exist. Over the following weeks, Tamsin kept her promise to Elizabeth. She researched the full story, contacted historians and journalists, and worked to ensure that Elizabeth Carver's name became associated not with a haunted location, but with a victim of domestic violence who had fought for her freedom. A small memorial was installed near the oak tree, bronze plaque on a stone marker. It read, "In memory of Elizabeth Carver, 1918 to 1952, who died on this spot while fleeing violence. May she rest in peace, and may we never forget those who suffer in silence. The construction proceeded as planned. Barriers were installed, lighting improved, the curve made safer, and for the first time in over 70 years there were no mysterious accidents at mile marker 47. No time discrepancies, no impossible phone calls, no visions of women in dark coats standing in the road. The parkway returned to being just a parkway. Tamsin returned to her regular duties in Westchester County, and life went on. But she never forgot the night they broke the loop. Never forgot the faces of those 17 souls finally finding freedom. And she never forgot Elizabeth Carver, the woman who had suffered so much that she'd torn a hole in time itself. 3 months after the loop was broken, Tamsin received a letter at the station. No return address, postmarked from a town that didn't exist on any map. Inside was a single photograph, old and faded, showing a young woman with dark hair and a genuine smile. On the back, written in neat handwriting, were 4 words. "This is who I was." Tamsin hung the photo in her locker, a reminder that even in death, even after becoming something monstrous, Elizabeth Carver had still been human underneath. A reminder that trauma could warp reality itself, but compassion could heal it. And a reminder that sometimes the most powerful thing you could do for someone wasn't to save them or fix them or solve their problem. Sometimes it was simply to witness their pain, acknowledge their suffering, and tell them that they mattered. The Taconic State Parkway stretched north through the Hudson Valley, carrying thousands of vehicles every day. Most drivers never noticed mile marker 47, never knew about the oak tree, or the woman who had died there, the 17 souls who had been trapped in an eternal loop of suffering. But Tamsin knew, and she remembered, and that was enough. Because the dead didn't need to be remembered by everyone. They just needed to be remembered by someone. And as long as one person held their story, kept their truth alive, they would never truly be forgotten. The loop was broken. The victims were free, and mile marker 47 was finally, after 7 decades of tragedy, just another point on a map. And sometimes, on clear autumn nights when the moon was full, drivers passing that spot would report a strange sensation. Not fear, not dread, but a feeling of peace, of release, of someone who had been burdened for far too long, finally setting down their load and walking away. The oak tree stood silent in the darkness, its branches reaching toward the stars, no longer grasping, but simply existing. And if you listened very carefully in the quiet moments between passing cars, you might hear something on the wind. Not screaming, not crying, not calls for help, but laughter, soft and gentle and free. The laughter of someone who had finally, after an eternity of suffering, found peace.